Yes, our lovely Moroccan student. Good afternoon to you as well. All right, we're going to start by going through the review questions for units 1 and 2, page 13. Open up your textbooks. So many windows open. Not good, not good. Good for my PC at least. Okay, once again, page 13. Let me read out this question. You tell me what you got as your answer. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask and we'll discuss, but I will provide an explanation as needed. We're going to begin with question number 1 here. Which statement is true regarding the use of the term realtor? What'd you guys get? Correct answer is B as in Bravo. Yes. All realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors. Remember the difference between being a realtor and just a real estate licensee. You just sit back and relax for a second because, all right, cool. I like the initiative. But yes, just because you earn a real estate license does not make you a realtor. You have to join the membership to become a realtor. And we know it's not free, it's not cheap. You can't join independently. You have to be working for a broker that has this membership, like myself. Let's continue to number 2. The term follow-up refers to, it's actually D as in Delta. It's a good guess, but it's D. What a sales associate does for buyers and sellers when? After the sale. And what is follow-up useful for as a real estate professional? Yeah, more leads, of course, future leads. A reputation, word of mouth advertising, of course. That's why we follow up in any form of sales, not just real estate, but obviously we understand the benefits of doing it in this business because long-lasting business relationships and so forth. Number 3, even though certain exceptions apply, an active real estate licensee may legally be entitled to appraise real property for compensation concerning a non-federally related transaction. What'd you get? It's a good guess, but it's actually longest answer. It's A as in Alpha. As long as they do not represent themselves as a state certified or licensed appraiser and comply with the USPAP, which is the standards of professional appraisal practices. Okay. We know that as an associate, you can provide an appraisal. You can appraise property. You can charge for your estimate of value. That's what appraising is. However, you can't represent yourself as a state certified or licensed appraiser. And your estimate of value cannot be used for any federally related transaction. What does that even mean? That's a real estate, a financial transaction. Let me be more clear. If a real estate transaction involves financing, which is 90% of residential deals, right? Then they won't accept your estimate of value as a sales associate, which you are soon to be. They want a state certified licensed appraiser to provide an official appraisal report. Does that make sense to you guys? Because financially related transactions or transactions that involve financing are governed by federal laws, such as ACOA, TILA, RESPA, and other things that don't make any sense to you at this point because we'll see it in a later unit. Number 4, the field of property management has experienced rapid growth and specialization primarily because of, it's yes, C as in Charlie, the increase in the number of absentee owners that are absent, essentially. And because they're absent, and we know real estate is a labor-intensive investment, you have to hire somebody and they don't work for free. Property management is a service that we can provide as an active real estate professional, but you can't operate providing property management services independently. You have to be working for a broker that has a property management company, for instance. Number 5, real estate licensees must comply with the standards of professional appraisal practices when conducting which value estimates? It's A, appraisals. Because when you're providing a BPO or a CMA, you do not have to comply with the USPAP. 6, appraisers are paid a fee. We have to be accurate here. It's actually A, yes, because to accept compensation based on the appraised value is, of course, a conflict of interest. If I said, hey, listen, I'm going to give you a percentage based on what you think the property is worth, how much is the property worth? 1 billion. Yes, exactly. Dr. Evil. 7, the 5 major sales specialties do not include. This is easy. It's B as in Bravo, special use. Good job. Because you have the 5 areas of real estate: residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, and businesses. Number 8, an owner of a Florida property. Hi, go ahead and grab a seat so we can get started promptly here. Decided to hire someone to handle properties, leasing, managing, marketing. This is an easy one. What are they describing here? What service? What's their capacity? What's their role? It's property management, guys. B as in Bravo. Bravo. Good for 1 point. Number 9, which type of construction involves building to a buyer's specifications? Correct answer is C as in Charlie. Charlie. Yeah, you got it. Watching too much TikTok. You get that. You'll correct me, right? You know the military lingo. Who says it's not Charla, right? Could be Charla. Yeah, actually, wouldn't that be a thing though? There's got to be somebody named Charla, like somebody that really wanted a boy, and they're like, it's like, all right, I got a girl. I want to be Charlie Jr., but whatever. Name it Charla. That's so bad. I said it. All right, 10. The term dedication as it appears to development and construction refers to A, gift of land by the owner to the local government for a public use. What is the most common example of this that we described within a subdivision? The streets. Streets are the most common example, but sidewalks and parks are also examples of dedication. They'll give them away because the developer does not want to maintain them after they sell out the community. Which type of license is required to sell or lease business opportunities for another person? Real estate license. C as in Charlie. Yep. There's no such thing as a business broker license or a business opportunity broker license. We just said that if you specialize in buying, selling, leasing businesses, they simply call you a business broker, but that's not a separate license. It's just a name. You need at least a real estate license to participate in that type of service and make that your specialty. Active, of course. 12, selecting a limited geographical area in which a real estate professional develops special expertises. C, farming or having a farm area. Yeah. Uh-oh. Is it doing that? All right. And of course, what's the whole purpose of being an expert? To eliminate what around you? Competition. Yeah, exactly. Competition. And you have to find different ways, clever ways of standing out from the crowd amongst all of your competitors. And there's a lot of people that have a real estate license. Let's face it. We know this. However, there's enough to eat for everybody. That's the beautiful thing about this business. And you can start at any age and become successful in this business. I don't know if you realize that. I've taught students in the past that are retired and just looking for something to do. And turns out they just absolutely crushed it. So you can do that as well. It doesn't matter at what age you begin this. It's just one of those careers. And actually, the more developed your network of individuals are, the easier it is to promote yourself and have a warm lead, right? Not a cold lead or a cold call, but a warm lead. Say, hey, listen, how you doing? Yeah, catching up, blah, blah, blah. By the way, I got my real estate license. I just want to let you know, if you need help with anything, just shout at me, right? Make it simple and you'll get business just off of that. Managing which type of property of more than 10 units requires a CAM license? D as in Delta, condo complex. Yep. Effective advertising involving developing a database of prospective prospects to direct a specific message is called. Yeah, it's easy enough. It's C as in Charlie, target marketing. 15, last question for this unit. And unit 1 was just an introduction to the real estate business. It wasn't bad. It was not overwhelming whatsoever. A broker charges a prospective seller $50 for a CMA. Which statement is true or applies? It's actually B as in Bravo. This is permissible provided you do not represent that CMA as an official appraisal report. Yep. CMA has its own thing, and we'll talk more. Let me describe what a CMA is and how it works, because we'll dive a little bit deeper in Unit 16, which obviously we're distance from. But a CMA is essentially looking for recent sales of similar properties within the surrounding area. And when I say similar, I say of similar size and quality. And you're looking for at least 3 recent sales of similar properties. And when I say within the surrounding area, what does that entail? How much of a distance from the subject property are you looking for recent sales? You're not going to look 30 miles away, right? But how close to the subject property? No more than 1 mile. That's the rule. This is the rule of thumb. Now, it's not like you're going to be scrutinized. It just means that your estimate of value is not going to be accurate, because you want to get as close as you can get to the subject property as possible. If the property is located within a subdivision, stay in the same subdivision and look for recent sales within that same community, because you know as well as I, the properties in the community across the street could look completely different and have a completely different value from the community that you're currently in. And they're within 1 mile, right? Why can't we use it? It's just, it won't be accurate. So just something to consider. You might have beat up, rundown old houses across the street, but they're within a mile radius. Are you going to use those? Maybe not. Stay within the same community. That's perfect. Yeah, and I guess that would be the last component. No more than 6 months. But if I can speak to what's currently going on in our market, the market is volatile. And we know we're coming up on a big election right now, and the end of the year, and changing of the guard, everything that comes along with being in an inflationary period. Just there's a lot going on right now. The market is just not stable enough to look for sales as far out as 6 months. I would say look for recent sales as close as you can get to the current date as possible. If you got 3 recent sales within the past month and then 3 recent sales within the past 6 months, I would say use the ones within the past month. Otherwise, we know 6 months ago is a different market. And then 6 months from now, it's probably going to be even more complex. We'll see which direction it goes. However, everybody's paying attention. So, Unit 2. Let's go to the end of Unit 2, page 39. Is that right? 41. Okay. Thank you. 41. Question 1. A licensed sales associate may operate. Correct answer is, the most accurate answer is B, especially how they use the term registered or registration. We know what that means. For license purposes, is the process of submitting information to the beeper. That's registration. And that's one of the ways to do it, is hanging your license with an employer, such as a broker or even an owner developer. Number 2, an associate applicant is not required to comply with which requirement? See, be a bona fide Florida resident. Must you be a resident to obtain a Florida real estate license? No, you can live anywhere on the planet. Nor do you have to be a citizen. We'll have a question about that within just a moment. Number 3, which person does not meet the experience requirements to obtain a Florida broker's license? Correct answer is D. And the reason why, and something I don't know if we mentioned yesterday, but I can share it with you right now. To become a broker, we know the time period for experience. It's 2 years within 5 years. You'll see that within this answer. But to become a broker, you must have experience with or be active with a what? A broker. This is the rule. You cannot earn the experience to become a broker yourself by hanging your license with an owner developer, like those major home builders, timeshare resorts, and so forth. Now, sometimes they appoint a broker of record or a qualifying broker to kind of lead their company. But you have to ask that question. If your ultimate goal is to open up your own brokerage company, then you need to know if your license is going to be hung with an owner developer or an actual broker. It's a relevant question, of course. Number 4, what information appears on the face of the license? Good for 1 point. It's C as in Charlie, license number. Simply put. 5, an associate applicant is not required to disclose which information on the license application. Yeah, because we know that's not required. But you do need to have a what number? A social. And for what reason? No. Not for taxes. Not to make sure you're legal to work in this country. For child support. Okay. Yes, exactly. Of course, we know the real reason, but the reason they give in the text, doesn't make any sense. Child support obligations. It was not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just odd that they just can't give us the truth. Like we can't handle it. 6, a real estate licensee works on a commission basis for 2 separate brokerage companies. Which statement is true? Yeah, it is A, because we know that we can only have one registered employer at any given time. You can't hang your license with both. What I described yesterday, if you can recall, is where you're salaried with one and then hang your license active with a broker, for instance. Is that acceptable? Well, it doesn't violate any law because your license is only active with one employer and you're simply salaried with the other. But if those companies find out, they're going to terminate you or ask you to make a choice if they really like you.
Isn't it like having a regular job?
Yeah. Imagine if you work part-time at Lowe's and part-time at Home Depot. You know what I'm saying? It's like there might be a conflict. So what is a Latin term for a plea of nolo? Okay. Yes, not YOLO, but nolo contendere. 8. What'd you guys get for 8? Simple. It is C. Yeah, licensed by endorsement, and there's the process. Providing proof of spouse's military status, submit fingerprints, background check, and they can issue a license in that other state. 9. Which event may cause the FREC to refuse to certify an individual as qualified for licensure? It's B. It was convicted of fraud, keyword convicted, in an insurance scam. We'll see how that differs from the last question. Or one of the last questions. 10. An applicant has held a real estate license in good standing in another state since 2019. The applicant is licensed in a state that has mutual recognition with Florida. 5 months ago, they moved to Orlando. That sounds familiar. Are they eligible to receive a Florida real estate license through mutual recognition, this benefit? Correct answer is A, as in alpha. Good job. Because we know that benefit is only for residents or non-residents. I'm asking you, residents or non-residents? Non-residents. And they moved to Orlando how many months ago? 5. Is that more than 4? So they're considered to be a resident. And therefore, they can't get the license through mutual recognition. They have to go through those 5 steps that we talked about yesterday, which are, of course, completing this course. And it's all on that flyer. If you look in the folder that I provided to you as well, the 5-step guide. Fingerprinting, right? For your background check of criminal history, your application online, all of this, that's online. Passing your class exam, and of course, passing the state exam. 13, an associate applicant who has submitted a correctly completed application for the state license examination and who successfully, well, I skipped. That was a test. Good job. Good job. You passed the test. Number 11. A woman received her Florida sales associate license last year. Which requirement must she complete to become a licensed real estate broker? Yeah, before you can even apply for the broker's license, you have to have completed your first renewal as a sales associate, which we know to be what obligation with us? The answer, the 45-hour post-licensing course with us. So that's why I mentioned if you have to do it anyway and you know that, and you don't want to wait till last minute, procrastinate, and run the chance of losing your license because one day is all it takes. I just got another song stuck in my 1 yes is all it takes. One day is all it takes. Losing your license. I'll figure it out. I'm a jingle king. So 12, A man has a North Carolina broker's license, but he's not licensed in Florida. He sells some land he owns in Florida. Is that okay? Yeah. Because of what letter? B as in Bravo. For sale by owner. That's okay. Do you need a real estate license to sell your own? No. FISBO. FISBO, not Frisbee or Fizbo the clown, but FISBO. For sale by owner. 13, an associate applicant who has submitted I feel like I've seen it so many times. All right, anyhow. It's probably the most detailed answer. Submitted a correctly completed application for the state license examination and who successfully passes the state exam may legally begin to operate as a licensee when the what? D, applicant is notified of having passed the state exam, filed the appropriate form to become registered as active with the beeper, and the beeper's website indicates the active status. And you can always check on your status on the beeper's website. They keep track of licensees' statuses. Yes. We'll talk about statuses today, the various statuses that exist that you should be aware of and what causes those statuses. 14, if the post-licensing requirement is not fulfilled before the first renewal and you want to continue in the real estate business, what do you have to do to continue? It's B as in Bravo. Shortest answer, requalify as if you've never had a license. One day is all it takes. It's gonna catch on. Watch. 15, services of real estate do not include?
D.
Yes, because do you need a real estate license to sell cemetery lots? No. Because they're not considered to be real property. So it's not a service of real estate. By selling those or renting mobile home lots for that matter. 16, which statement best describes who must be licensed to practice real estate in Florida? It's D as in Delta. And we read this out specifically yesterday. In detail, anyone who performs real estate services for another person for compensation of any type unless specifically exempted by law. And at the end of the unit, we talked about all of those exemptions, those 5 groups. Like if you own the property, if you're salaried based on your profession, court appointed, we talked about that as well. All right, 17, which individual is not exempt from licensure under Florida Statute 475? How complicated is that, right? Isn't that tricky? Just pay attention up here. Look what I'm highlighting. If you're exempt from licensure, what does that mean? Are you required or not required? You're not required. You're not required to have a license if you're exempt. But that's not what it says. It says, so what does that mean? Isn't that a double negative? That means which individual needs a license? Why didn't they just say that? But not trick question, but tricky question. So there is a correct answer here. It's hard to get it when they're trying to use these tricky phrases. And that's why I mentioned you should schedule to take your exam in. Who speaks Spanish? Everybody speaks Spanish. Yes. You missed it yesterday. So the advice that I provide to my students is to schedule and take your exam in Spanish. Okay. Now I know you have no context. You have no context behind that. You're like, yeah, so that's a good assumption. The average person would assume that I have the answers that I'm just going to give you for the state exam. That's not the case here. It's just the translation from English into Spanish. They chose the questions that were easier to convert from English into Spanish, the questions that are more straightforward. Not because there's no translation for not exempt. You can't translate that into Spanish. So how is the question going to be on the Spanish version of the test? It's going to say, which individual needs a license? Isn't that more clear and easier to answer? But you're scheduling to take your exam in Spanish. The computer screen is going to be in Spanish. But in the upper right-hand corner, there's a button that says translate. You click that button once, it will translate the entire exam from Spanish into English. And you can toggle back and forth if it helps you out. I don't know if you speak Spanish or not, but now you get the more clear version of the test. And they're testing you on a smaller database of questions as well. 5 versions of the Spanish exam, 20 versions of the English exam. You didn't hear from me. Don't make me famous for it, but you're our students. I want to help you out. Listen, they know that why. Yeah, it's not like the state is like, oh my gosh, there's a really big demand for man, we did a good thing by like it was a smart choice to translate. So many people want to take it in Spanish. Wow. Man, listen, worst case scenario, if you go to the reception desk and they start speaking to you in Spanish, which they won't, just tell them I prefer to speak in English. Sit me down to take my exam. They're not going to do that. And they're not going to deny you because they don't care. I'm going to tell you right now, they don't care. They say, you want Spanish? Here. You want English? Here. Choose. You're still tested on the same information. Just that because of that translation trick, right? We're taking advantage. What was that? Yeah. Yeah, they know what's going on. Anyhow, 18, a salaried individual manages a condo building and rents units for 3-month to 6-month periods. The manager what? D is in Delta is exempt. Oh, yeah, yes. That was test. Good job. Correct answer is D is in Delta. The reason why is because you're receiving bonuses. Exactly. So to be paid on a transactional basis, you need a real estate what? Yeah, anything off the transaction, even just a bonus, requires a real estate license. But anyhow, 18 is D is in Delta. 19, a developer purchased a tract of land and subdivided the property into individual lots. The developer hired his son, who's not licensed, to sell the lots. Okay, little nepotism. Nepo baby. The father agreed to pay his son a salary of $200 per week. Wow, thanks, Dad. Appreciate it, Dad. After 2 weeks, the son had only sold 2 lots. I wonder why. So the father decided to add an incentive. Uh-oh. The father promised his son after every 5th lot was sold, he would give his son a lot free and clear. That's one hell of an incentive. Wish I had a daddy like that. Sounds like a different type of daddy, though. Anyhow, after 1 more week, the son had only sold 1 more lot. The son is just not good at sales, obviously. So the son quits his job to work for another developer who pays a higher weekly salary based on this information. What's true? D, of course, longest answer. Both are in violation. Didn't we talk about this? Because of the incentive that was given and received, both are in violation because the son did not have a real estate what? License. So how could he receive an incentive based on sales performance? Compensation is anything of value, even a free and clear lot. That's something of value. I think we can agree to that. 20, FBI files reveal. Okay, if FBI knows about somebody, was it a small crime? Probably not. And it says they worked 6 months ago as a real estate broker in Georgia where they were charged with arson. What's arson? Burning property and a large insurance claim. So burning property for what? If somebody was caught in insurance fraud, burning property for money, I don't know. What do you think? Should they be working in the housing industry, buying and selling properties? Could they be trusted to do this? Probably not. Okay, but we don't get to decide as the average, the outside public. Who gets to decide if they're qualified or not? It's FREC. And it's A, will use their discretion to determine if they're qualified or not based on the background check and might even ask them to come in for an interview. FREC meets once a month. I mentioned that to you. They meet downtown Orlando, and these meetings are open to the public. These meetings are very interesting because FREC only deals with the most severe penalties, crimes, and people that are in these types of situations that want to get a license. And you get to see this type of stuff, which is pretty intriguing. Anyhow, but if you sign in with your license number, do you get some credit? How many hours credit towards your CE? 3 hours per renewal cycle. So if you're due for your 14 hours and you cover 3, you still have to do 11. So that means you're better off just coming and knocking out all 14 at once. But go to the meeting just because, not because you're trying to get that 3 hours credit. I don't think that's going to help you. Anyhow, let's jump into our session, if that's okay, because we're making good time. Is that all right? Okay. Today's going to be units 4 and 3 and 4. I might not teach chronologically. And the reason why I say 4 and 3 is because we're going to start with unit 4 and then work our way back So unit 3, question. Yes. Just ignore whatever she just said, okay? Listen, there's not any back and forth. Yeah, like looking back in the unit and trying this, it's okay. It's not the worst thing. However, I just want you to challenge yourself and rack your brain on it and not be tempted to look back until the next day. Feel confident in your answer. Stick with your gut. I want you to get used to that. And then the next day, you give me an opportunity to share with you not just the correct answer, but an explanation if needed. So I think, yeah, I do think it's going to help. And then once you're preparing for your state exam, then you can go back and review all the highlights that you've been making. The summary at the end of each unit is really good too in preparation for the state exam. But I made an exam prep. As I mentioned, I'm the king of exam prep. We're the first in the state of Florida, if not the nation, to make a mobile app to help you prepare for the state exam. Now there's some other players in the game, but that's because we were the originators. We're originators, we're not imitators, okay? So we innovate, we don't imitate. And we've consistently done that. So I'm going to share with you the details of what's included in the exam prep, because I know some of you have approached me and said, hey, Michael, is there anything else that I can use to help me pass the state exam? I need all the help I can get just to give me an edge. And something that's like not crazy in price. Yeah, I have it. I have exactly what you're looking for. It hits all the points. Okay. Every type of form of study that you like to indulge in, whether it's audio, visual, interactive, it hits all of those notes. So I'll show you in a moment. But for now, we're going to jump into our session, units 4 and 3, meaning we're starting with unit 4, working our way back to unit 3. And unit 4 is all about the various relationships that exist in our business, and you have to have knowledge of these relationships. We're going to go through each one. Let me just close this out. Save some space. Okay, unit 4. We're actually going to start on page 66. Okay, join me real quick. The first thing that we encounter is the law of agency. And there's something important here on line 2. I want you to highlight this. When a person, the action of a person doing what? Delegating authority to another creates an agency relationship in our business. You got to know this. So just the action of somebody delegating authority to another in a real estate transaction, for instance, it creates an agency relationship. Remember that. We'll come back to it. Agency relationships fall within the body of law called the law of agency. And there are 3 types of law that I am going to review with you guys. So the first one is called what? Common law. If I can simplify this for you, common law is common sense law. I know it sounds silly, but that's really all it is. It's the difference between right and what? Wrong. Ethical versus unethical. It's assumed by we as a people. The next type of law we encounter is what? Yeah. And once again, I want to try to simplify this textbook for you and this terminology you encounter. Statutory means state. So we're talking about state law. Like some of the state law we have already encountered, Chapter 455 of the Florida Statutes. That's the rules that govern DeBeeper, the laws that govern DeBeeper. And then Chapter 475 of the Florida Statutes. Those are the laws that govern us, real estate professionals. We remember when the law was created, 1923. 2 years later, they created who? Correct. To do what? Yes, exactly. To administer and enforce the law. You got it. And then we come to administrative law. Anytime you see the word administrative, I want you to think of, write this down, license. So we see license law. Administrative law, license law. Like Chapter 475 of the Florida Statutes. Once again, that's Florida Real Estate License Law, which is also a state law, statutory law, if you understand what I'm getting at. Now, with that being said, If you move down to line 23, highlight this. Just a moment ago, we said when a person delegates authority. But what do we call that person that's delegating the authority to another in real estate? Yes, I want you to highlight this. They're called a principal. And the party that's assuming the responsibility is called the what? Yeah. Person who accepts the authority, delegated that responsibility, is the agent. You'll see agent here as well. So what's an example of this? Imagine I'm your broker, you're all my sales associates. So I hire you to work for our brokerage company. I am the what? Principal, because I'm delegating authority to my associates to act as agents for the brokerage company. But what does that actually mean? If you move a little bit further down, highlight this, starts with an F on line 33. When you encounter a principal and agent relationship, this also exists within a what type of relationship is formed? Fiduciary. I don't know if you're familiar with what fiduciary is. I know it's an odd term, but fiduciary means you're dealing in what with one another? Look, I'm highlighting it. Trust, confidence. Or if you look on line 35, starts with the letter A, it's what? Yes, alliance. Think about countries that have alliances with one another. Are they looking out for each other's best interests? That's exactly what a fiduciary relationship is. This is what we're describing. And that's what exists between a principal, the party delegating authority, to a what? Agent, party assuming that responsibility. And there's examples that we're going to describe in just a moment, more than what I already mentioned to you. Okay? But let's talk about buyers and sellers and the relationship that exists between those two parties in a typical real estate transaction. I'm asking you now, some participation. Do buyers and sellers have a fiduciary relationship with one another in a typical real estate transaction? Are buyers and sellers dealing in trust and confidence with one another to complete the deal? Yes or no? Absolutely not. Because buyers and sellers have adverse or opposite interests. The buyer wants to get the what? Cheapest price they can. The seller wants to get the what? Most money possible. So because their goals are not the same, they're opposite from one another, we use a phrase to describe the dynamic that exists between a buyer and a seller in a real estate transaction. They're dealing at what with one another? Yeah, you'll see it right here. It's italicized on line 37. At arm's length. That means stay at least an arm's length away because I don't trust you. And if you go to the next page, you might be tested on this as well. Describing the same thing on page 67, we use a Latin phrase to describe the same thing. Caveat emptor, which translates to let the buyer beware. Yeah, have you heard of this before? Let the buyer beware, be on guard. Because you don't trust one another, you don't have the same goal, correct? All right. Now, going back to principals and agents, where fiduciary exists between these two parties, there are two types of agents that exist. And depending on how much authority is delegated to you by a principal will dictate what type of agent you are. So depending on how much responsibility they give to you will determine if you are a general or a special agent. Do you see the two? Let's talk about the difference and maybe some examples. Anytime you see the word general from this point on in the textbook, I want you to think of the word some. Think of a general store has some of everything, like Dollar General, right? And with this, whenever you see some or general, think of some. And in this case, the agent, the general agent, is delegated some duties, some responsibility. Does that make sense? Some obligations. Not all on behalf of the principal, not one, but some. Like an example could be property management. Do you remember we talked about property managers yesterday? They're delegated some responsibility on behalf of the property owner, right? So the property owner is the principal and the property manager is the general agent. Because you're responsible for what? What's the sum duties you're responsible for? Yeah, maintenance, marketing, Yeah, collecting payments from tenants and so forth, leasing. Are you going to pay property taxes for the property owner? Are you going to handle lawsuits that arise against the property? No, some. And then another example of this, which we already saw on a previous page, it just so happens you're going to be tested on this, is the relationship that exists between an employing broker. You remember I said if I'm your employing broker and you're all my associates, what exists between you and I? What type of relationship starts with an F? Fiduciary relationship. I'm the principal, you are, but what type of agent? Because you're responsible for some duties on behalf of the brokerage company, if that makes sense, if you're connecting the dots. Versus a single agent, I'm sorry, not single, but special. But anytime you see the word special, I want you to write this down. It means specific or one. In this case, we're talking about duties, right? So you're responsible for one specific duty, and that's it on behalf of the principal that's delegating authority to you. One example of this could be listing a seller's property. This could be an example, and we'll come back to this later on in the unit. So once again, the property owner is the what? Is the principal. And the brokerage company that's listing the property in this capacity is going to act as agent. Yes, you got it. You got the hang of it. And what's the one responsibility? List the property, right? Look for a buyer. That's it. Nothing beyond that. If we continue on, we see brokerage relationships in Florida, and we are going to discuss these options on the following page. Understanding these three options, these three relationships that you can enter into with a buyer and or seller in a typical real estate transaction is what you need to know to ace this part of your exam. If you have any questions from Unit 4, it's mainly going to be based on understanding these three relationships. We're going to discuss those and go through each one in detail. But before we break it down, unpack it, go to page 69 and highlight this for your class exam question, just so you have all your highlights. So once again, just highlight quick. It's page 69. 69. Page 69, you'll see it. Lines 4 through 12. Page 69. The information that I skipped over is what we're going to come back to. It's just summarized for us on this page. So what I just provided to you was exactly what you're going to be tested on for your class exam. In this case, question number what? Exactly. So you can spend it. Obviously, it's not going to be in order. It's just throughout the entire book, I am going to provide all 100 question content to you. Does that make sense? So you can spend the time to put it in order and make your own little study guide, but this is what you're going to be tested on. Obviously, it's not questions and answers, but it's exactly what you need to know and focus on for the final. The final exam is a stepping stone. The state issues a license. We do not. You have to earn a certificate from us in order to take the state exam, but I don't want to make it a burden on you. So anyhow, let's focus on this chart when we come back. Be back at 6. Take a quick break. 10-minute break. Stretch out, grab a snack, do what you got to do, be ready to rock and roll. And then we're going to discuss these three relationships, the details of each one of these three.
That also noted because I missed yesterday's class, they gave me I already signed up for the missed day 1 class.
Yes.
It provides me with
The PDFs.
PDF. That's also.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, you got it. Let's turn on some música. Get some energy up.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Crystal Rivera, and I'm a realtor with Live Realty at Nona. I decided to be a real estate agent for my love of helping others, thinking about helping them with their first home, with their first apartment, with their first investment property. Flipping homes is what started me in the business. My husband is into flipping homes, so I went from nursing, which I'm still currently doing, but now going into real estate. Decided to use Cameron Academy because of my nursing schedule and how their schedule works well with my schedule. Did not expect to be prepared as I was. Michael was amazing. He prepared me in 2 weeks to take the test, literally 5 days after I completed the class. And 3 days after that, I was already signed with Live Realty. And here we are 5 weeks later, and I have my first listing. So definitely prepared me well for the real estate industry and just all that's to come. I'm excited, and I wish everybody luck.
Hey, my name's Jonathan Gibson. I am from Orlando, Florida. I had started my career in real estate based on wanting to... I started out my journey in real estate with Cameron Academy because I read a lot of online reviews, and there were exceptional reviews about Cameron. When I got here, I wasn't disappointed at all. I realized Michael was the best teacher, and he helped me learn everything I needed to know about real estate. And he's a very good instructor. He's thorough. He tells everything. He's one of the better professors. He's good at explaining stuff, helping you get through this and making it easy for everything. And I wanted to do real estate because I read some books and I bought homes, and I wanted to start renting out my property. And I know we had, based on my research online from Google and everything, I knew I had to do a school for Florida and do the 63-hour course. And I looked it up, came to Cameron Academy. It's been the best thing ever. He's helped us with connections. He's brought in different realtors and brokers, plus find work after the academy. So if you're wanting to learn anything about real estate, I would definitely recommend Cameron Academy.
Hi, my name is Tamara Fletcher, and I have experience in education. I've worked in education for over 17 years, but I always wanted to get into real estate. I wanted to get into real estate because I love a couple of things. I love people, I love making money, and I love being able to sell homes, or at least the potential of selling homes. I love real estate. That's what brought me to Cameron Academy. Cameron Academy has done so much for me. I have learned so much from Michael. The information that I've gained here has made me feel so prepared for the state exam as well as the exam at the end of the course. I can't go on enough about how enthusiastic Michael was during the whole process of learning, and how that really made a difference in the way that I learn. Being able to be here in person and take the in-person classes is what has really made it all the difference in the world. Michael is a great instructor. I saw great reviews about him and his instruction here at Cameron Academy, and I am really happy to say that all of those positive reviews are true, 1,000%. It's made a world of difference for me, and if I could do it again, I would.
My name is Gabriel Minyarji. I've been in the restaurant industry for the past 25 years, now getting the residential investment opportunity. I found Cameron Academy to be very helpful in my new endeavor. Michael Cameron has been very, very helpful, knowledgeable, provided very new and efficient information to help me endeavor my career. I'm very, very pleased and satisfied that I found Cameron Academy and the knowledge that I gained from them, and for all my future endeavors. I highly, highly, highly recommend them. I definitely give them a 5-star plus.
My name is Dennis Duen. I came to the Cameron Academy. My mentor, he also he told me go directly to Cameron Academy. They are very, very good, and that's how he got his license. And he advised me to go to that school. And when I came, so far, it was the best decision that I made. The instructor Michael was very, very good. He's very good, and it would benefit me. Very knowledgeable. So I want to say thank you to him. And I think I will pass because of him. I will pass both school exam and the state exam. So it was the best decision.
Sounds odd, doesn't it? What does that mean? You're hiring me to be your no broker? What does this mean? If you break down the terminology, it will make a little bit more sense. Remember what the word broker itself means. What does the word broker mean? If you're brokering something, it means you're facilitating between two parties to complete some type of transaction, right? So what does it mean to be hired as a no broker? It means you're not facilitating. I actually want you to write that down. With this relationship, if selected, you're not facilitating within the transaction. Nor are you representing. There's no representation if you choose this relationship. And facilitating also means to negotiate, right? Between two parties to accomplish some goal, in this case, within some form of transaction. It's going to make sense in just a moment, but once again, if you're hired as a no broker, you're hired not to facilitate. You're not even representing them if you choose this relationship with them. So when would you be hired to be a no broker? When would you be hired not to negotiate, not to facilitate, not to represent them? It's most likely when you're dealing with a for sale by owner. This is the most common circumstance in which you would choose this relationship. The name itself, if we can break it down, for sale by owner, is exactly like it sounds. It's for sale by the owner. They don't need a real estate agent to sell for them. They want to facilitate. They want to negotiate. They want to find a buyer that's willing to pay the price that they agree to. But once they find a buyer and negotiate a fair price and terms and so forth, they might not know what to do next. They don't know the contracts to utilize in order to solidify the deal. So they hire you, a real estate professional, to come in and not to negotiate or represent them, just to take care of the what? The contracts, the paperwork. So that's why we describe this as being the paperwork relationship. Write down paperwork. It's the paperwork relationship. And mainly, when would you enter into the paperwork relationship? When dealing with a what? Working with a FSBO. We call them FSBO sellers, right? For sale by owner sellers. Does that make sense to you guys? So once again, we call it the paperwork relationship. We're going to review these three at the end just to make sure you got it. But if you choose this relationship, it has the least amount of duties that are owed to that individual. And it makes sense because you're not representing, you're not facilitating, just taking care of the paperwork. So the least amount of responsibility. Think of the acronym ADD. This will help you remember. And you'll notice those three duties are consistent across the board in all three relationships we're going to discuss the details of. So let's go through each one. The first one is accounting for all funds. That means keeping track of the money. But let's talk about that for just a second. As a real estate professional, what's the only money you could possibly see and be responsible for throughout the duration of a real estate transaction before the closing when you actually earn your commission? Yeah, exactly. Say this again. Yes, we call it an EMD. EMD translates to earnest money deposit. So we're talking about the deposit. How does that work? Well, when you're working with a buyer that wants to offer a certain price for a property, you prepare the offer, basically fill out a sale contract for them, get them to sign, and then you present the sale contract to the listing agent that's working with the seller. And the seller is going to be presented this information for consideration. So if the seller accepts the terms, the price, conditions, and so forth, the seller would sign. And based on the terms of the agreement in the sale contract, it says when the buyer has to give an offer, a deposit. Once their offer is accepted, within how many days must the buyer give the deposit? Basically, as a show of good faith that the buyer is serious about purchasing the property. And it basically is a placeholder. It has their foot in the door so they can do their inspections and determine if they want to move forward with purchasing. And if they don't comply with the time periods and the conditions based on that agreement, the buyer could potentially lose their what? Their deposit, their EMD. Yeah, you're used to the gesture of, Anyhow, but do you get what I'm saying? So this is really the only money you could possibly see and be responsible for, and account for those funds is not something we're going to discuss right now. We'll see it in Unit 5 as to how you account for this money that you receive in a transaction. Just understanding what money you could see and be responsible for is the point I'm trying to make. Now, deal honestly and fairly, that goes without saying. I don't need to elaborate on this. But the next one does need some additional explanation. It says, disclose all known facts that affect the value of residential property. I want you to add this to it. What you're disclosing is all known, latent. What does latent mean? All known latent material, that means physical defects. This is what you're disclosing. We're talking about physical problems with the property. If you have knowledge of it as a real estate agent, what's your duty? Disclose, present it. This is consistent no matter what relationship you select. Do you understand what I'm saying? And it doesn't matter how small. If it's a physical defect and the buyer cannot see it for themselves, it's latent, and you're aware of it. Now, you can't disclose things that you're not aware of, right? And it's not your responsibility as a real estate professional to do the inspection on the property. That's the buyer. When their offer is accepted and they're under contract, they have a time period to do their inspections. So they pay for that. But if you're aware of something, or maybe some information is disclosed to you that the buyer can't necessarily see, you got to present it to your buyer. Of course, it should be the buyer's responsibility to do their due diligence. However, to avoid any, I don't want to say, we could say liability, because if there's a problem with the property, a physical issue, and a buyer has a problem with it, then who's the first person they blame? They most likely blame the real estate agent. But once again, it's not your responsibility to do the inspection. So how do you reduce liability and make sure that doesn't happen to you? It's very simple. You get the seller to fill out and sign something called a seller's disclosure. You're basically going to the seller and saying, hey, listen, tell me everything that you know that you're aware of that's a problem in the property. Tell me all the issues. And they have to attest to it. So it's basically like a checklist, and they present it to you. Now, if there's an issue that the buyer has a problem with, they can't blame you. You went to the seller, and you don't live in the property, right? You went to the seller and asked them, what's the issues? And they chose not to present some information that they were aware of. You obviously have to prove that to hold them legally accountable, but I'm just trying to give you a hypothetical. Does that make sense? So there are certain things that are questionable, though, as to what you should disclose and what should you not disclose. So how do we navigate that? Well, I'll give you some examples. You tell me what you think based on what we just learned. There is a hole in the wall. The buyer walks past it, doesn't say anything. Must you present it to them? Hey, by the way, there's a hole in the wall. Must you present that to them? Must you disclose? Yes or no? The answer is no. Because I never mentioned that that hole in the wall was latent. It wasn't hidden. I just said there's a hole in the wall. If the buyer can see it for themselves, must you disclose? The answer is no. But let's change that example, and let's say there's a painting covering the hole, and you know the hole exists behind the painting. Must you disclose now? Of course. If you're aware of it, of course, right? You can't disclose things that you're not aware of. Okay. What about the previous owner was a drug dealer? It used to be a crack house, a trap house, a meth lab, or something like this. Is that something that would have to be disclosed to the prospective buyer before they purchase? You're probably thinking, okay, is it relevant to me? I'll ask you, is it relevant to you to know if somebody was using it for illegal purposes prior to you purchasing? Is that relevant to you before you make a decision? Is that a deal breaker for you, I'm asking? Yes or no? Yes? Okay. Well, here's the thing. Whether or not it's disclosed to you, let's just say it's not disclosed to you, you'll find out eventually. You're going to have knocks on your front door at 1 a.m. Hey, you got that blue magic? Little Breaking Bad reference, but you get what I'm saying, right? So the question is, must that real estate agent disclose that information if they're aware of it, if they know that it was associated with illegal activity? The answer is no. Federal law says you do not have to disclose any type of illegal activity associated with the property. You don't. The real estate professional doesn't. What about somebody died in the primary bedroom? Is that something that would be a deal breaker for you and your family? If somebody had told you somebody died in the primary bedroom where you're going to be sleeping every single night, would you be willing to buy that property and sleep in that same room? Yes or no? You said negative? Okay, so the question is, must the real estate agent disclose something like that? Because obviously it's relevant to you, right? It affects your choice on whether or not you buy, correct? Must a real estate agent disclose? Federal law says you do not have to disclose any type of death associated with the property. There's a famous story about it. Who said they were from New York in here? I mentioned you're from New York. In Long Island, I believe it's Long Island, there is a house that is very famous. What is it?
The haunted house.
It was turned into a movie probably 3 different times, where like 3 or 4 owners consecutively died mysteriously in this house, and they thought it was haunted as a result of it. It was called Amityville Horror. Okay, but the question is, did the real estate agent who continuously sold and resold that property, knowing that every previous owner had died, must they have disclosed that to the prospective buyer? They didn't have to. Now, the question I get all the time is, what if somebody asks you directly, hey, what do you think about the property? Okay, did somebody die in this property? Because when I went into that room, I got this weird feeling. And I don't just get that feeling, and my hair stood up on end. It was chills and this energy. Like, I just feel like this black cloud every time I step into this room. Did somebody die? What if you actually know that somebody died in that property? Must you disclose that?
No, we don't have to, but if not.
Now see, that's the question. So I'm not telling you to lie, okay? Because it does say deal honestly and fairly. I'm not telling you to lie. However, could you be the agent that says, I suggest you do your own research? Could you be that agent? Yes, you could. Because federal law says you're not required to disclose. So you could simply say, hey, listen, if it's that's relevant to you, you could do your own research and let me know if you want to proceed. And you could leave it at that. That's up to you. Obviously, you want to dress it up in whatever way you want to dress it up, but you get what I'm saying. You don't have to disclose. That's the rule. And that's the point I wanted to make. So that's the no brokerage relationship. Let's move on to the most common, which is a transaction broker relationship, and discuss some details of it. Transaction broker. I think the name is giving it away. Unlike no broker, in this relationship, you are brokering, right? In the transaction, hence the name. So you're facilitating. And I want you to think of a transaction broker as a facilitator. And there is representation here as well. But you can represent both parties. That means buyer and what? Seller. In the same transaction, and make a commish off of both sides. So why wouldn't you select this relationship if you could represent both sides? If that's a detail of this relationship, why wouldn't you want to facilitate for both sides and keep all the commission in-house? If this relationship gives you that ability, you can see why it's the most common choice, right? And your broker would most likely dictate what relationship you should select, which one is most appropriate based on the circumstance. But I can almost guarantee that they will advise you to use a transaction broker relationship. I'm a broker. I can tell you based on personal experience. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, Michael, how on earth do you remain neutral in the negotiation process? If you're facilitating between a seller and a buyer, we know they're dealing at what with one another? They're dealing at arm's length with one another. That means they don't have the same goal, correct? So how do you ethically negotiate or facilitate to both sides if that's the case? As a transaction broker, it's very simple. You must remain neutral and or limited, but let me explain how you would do that. It's based on one of the duties we encounter that we see on this list. You'll notice for transaction broker, we add 4 more on top of the 3 we already mentioned. Use skill, care, and diligence. And then here is how you remain neutral in the negotiation process. Look what it says next. Present all what? Yes. So you present offers and information to each side until they can reach a what? An agreement. This is also known as mutual assent or a meeting of the minds. And you complete this negotiation while remaining neutral. You present offers and information to both sides. You solidify the deal, and you have the ability to make commission off of both sides. What's better than that? So what I'm trying to drive home is, and I guess I can be a little bit more clear, I'm not telling you that you only select this relationship when you have a seller and a buyer sitting in front of you at the same time, pleading with you to represent both of them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you can start by listing a seller's property with this relationship, and it leaves the door open for you to also represent a buyer, bring them to the negotiation table, represent both sides, negotiate for both sides, solidify the deal, and make a commission off of both sides. Does that make sense? Yeah, essentially. You're a facilitator. So that's what this is all about. Think of transaction brokers as facilitators. Any questions about this? Now, exercise limited, be neutral, confidentiality. Don't present information to the other side of the transaction that would cause one party to lose their leverage in negotiation. For instance, imagine if the seller tells you, I'm desperate. I have to sell the property by this date. Otherwise, I'm going to lose everything. So I know we're listing it at $500,000, but I'll take as little as $300,000. If you could sell it by this date for at least that amount. Are you going to take this information and use it against them? Working with a buyer, maybe one of your investor buddies, and tell them, hey, listen, my seller is desperate. We can lowball them. And you'll have tons of equity in this property. Is that acceptable? No, that would be a violation of this limited confidentiality. Perform any additional duties that are mutually agreed upon. That's self-explanatory. Now, let's move on to the single agent relationship. If I can make some space for it. The single agent relationship is actually just like it sounds. As a single agent, you're going to choose your side. You're going to be single for the buyer, or you could choose to be single with the seller. Not for both. You have to choose your side. And whatever side you choose, think of the acronym COLD. You're being cold to the other side because you have loyalty, obedience, full disclosure, anything you know that's going to benefit them within the transaction, you present it to them. You're looking out for that side and that side alone. Wouldn't you describe this as these two parties having a what type of relationship? Fiduciary relationship. And that is accurate because this is the only relationship out of the 3 that we mentioned where fiduciary exists. And we're going to write down some details. Yes, there's representation here. You can facilitate, well, for one side, but there's representation. And you're choosing one side. Buyer or seller, not both. And whatever side you choose, what exists between you and that party? What type of relationship? Fiduciary relationship. It's the only one out of the 3 where fiduciary exists. Are you with me so far? Any questions? Now, do you think the average buyer or seller knows that these 3 relationships exist to fight for one versus another? Did you know that these three relationships existed prior to taking this class? To fight for it and say, oh no, I want this one versus that one. You think, okay, no, there's a listing agreement if I'm trying to sell my property, and then there's a buyer representation agreement if they're representing me as a buyer. They don't know that there are different relationship options that exist. But now that you know, you can choose which one is most appropriate based on the circumstance. But I can tell you right now, you will most likely select the transaction broker relationship. Because if you choose single, then you're limited to one side. You don't have the benefit of representing both sides and making a commission off of both sides. Transaction broker is the one where that exists, yes.
Could you run into a client that is interested in just, selling and
Yeah. You could choose any one of these three. You can't do all three simultaneously. So you choose which one is most appropriate based on the circumstance. But I can tell you, you're probably going to choose a transaction broker relationship. Because why wouldn't you want to at least leave that door open to potentially work with another party, bring them together, and keep all the commission in-house? Rather than saying, hey, listen, I have representation, I have loyalty with this side. I can't represent you, so you have to get your own representation. You're just basically pushing your commission away. Like, okay, get your own representation. I'm gonna have to split with you now. Versus they're in front of you, they don't have representation, they're looking for your help. Be a transaction broker and help out both sides. Now, I would say probably the only consistent circumstance where it would be the ethical choice to choose the single agent relationship is if you're working with friends and family. Does that make sense? Because if you have an existing relationship with somebody, you're probably going to look out for their best interest versus anybody else. So the ethical choice would be, but could you be a transaction broker for friends and family? You could. It's an option. But I would say that you're probably going to try to benefit that one side that you know and have a relationship with. So anyhow, let's move on. I'm going to test you on this now. And tell me what you think. Based on those three relationships, go to page 70. Look in the shaded box. We're going to be tested on this. There's only one relationship out of the three where fiduciary exists. Which one is it? Exactly. And for that reason, what is the buyer or seller you selected, whatever side you selected? Remember, you can only select one side in a single agent relationship. What are they referred to as? Starts with a P, principal, yes. And they're delegating authority to you and your brokerage to act in their best interests. Because the other two relationships have no fiduciary, what do we refer to the buyer and or seller as? Our customer. Why is this important, understanding this terminology? If you're taking your state exam and they use the name principal, you know they can only be talking about one relationship, the single agent relationship. So you can use that elimination, the process of elimination, to say, okay, they're only talking about single agency here because they use the name principal. We can eliminate all the others. And it could guide you towards the correct answer, just that alone. Now, what do you think about a dual agency? Have you ever seen a spy movie before? You ever see a spy? What are spies doing in a spy movie? They're playing what? Both sides. They're being a double agent, guys. Isn't that the same thing as being a dual agent? Isn't the name the same? It is the same name, right? And guess what? It's the same thing in real estate. You're trying to play both sides to benefit yourself or whatever third party. It's the same thing in real estate. So let me explain. What relationship does alliance exist out of those three that we talked about? It's in the shaded box. Out of those three relationships, which one does alliance exist? Allegiance, alliance, fiduciary. This only the single agent relationship. I'm just reviewing again with you guys. I'm repeating it for a reason so it really sticks. If you have alliance with the seller, and then you also try to have alliance with the buyer, and bring them together within the same transaction, that's an illegal dual agency. You're trying to be a double agent. How can you do that? How can you have alliance with both buyer and seller in the same transaction when they have opposite interests, adverse interests? Remember, they're dealing at arm's length. Okay. And that's exactly what's described here. It says the brokerage firm represents both sides as single agents. It's illegal in Florida, guys. And let me be clear on this. You notice it doesn't say real estate agent. It says real estate brokerage firm. Did you notice that? Because representation does not exist between the buyer and or seller and you, the sales associate. You are not representing the buyer and or seller. It's your brokerage company that's representing the buyer and or seller. You're just doing all the work, and based on your employment agreement with the broker, dictates that you get a certain percentage split when the transaction is solidified for all business that you bring to that company. And there's obviously a paper trail of that. Does that make sense? Okay, so if you look at the agreement, the representation agreement, you are not representing. It's not XYZ real estate sales associate representing this buyer or seller. It's the brokerage company's name is going to be on the agreement. I got to be very clear on this because it's going to help us understand some information we encounter later on. And also, for that matter, any money, any business you bring to the brokerage company is the brokerage company's business. So therefore, any money earned off of this business is actually whose money? It's the brokerage company's money. Of course, once again, you're entitled to a split. Every brokerage company has their own split between the firm and their associates, but that's where you make your choice, right? You interview with different brokerage companies. What do you offer? What's your split? What's your training look like? Do you provide leads? Stuff like that. Anyhow, let's move on. Okay, now I can test you. In this margin right here, I am going to give you some examples of the three relationships that can be combined with one another in the same brokerage company and the same real estate transaction. You tell me if it's acceptable or not. If these combinations can be made within the same brokerage company in the same transaction, okay? Can you be a transaction broker for both sides? Is that acceptable? Can you be a facilitator for both sides while remaining neutral? Yes. This combination is acceptable. The answer is yes. Can you be a transaction broker, TB is transaction broker for one side, and a NB, no broker, for the other side? Neutral for one side and simply just taking care of the paperwork for the other side. Is that combination acceptable? Yes, it is. Because remember, the no brokerage relationship is just a relationship. It's not representation. It's just taking care of the paperwork. What about a no brokerage relationship with both sides? Is that combination acceptable? Taking care of the paperwork for both sides? Answer is yes. What about a no brokerage, a transaction broker relationship with one side and a single agent relationship with the other side? Is that acceptable? Can you be neutral for one side and have loyalty and obedience with the other side? Complete alliance with the others. That's a conflict. The answer is no, you can't do that. That combination cannot be made. What about a single agent relationship with both sides? No, we just learned that that's an illegal what? That's an illegal what? Dual agency. You got it. And what about a single agent relationship with one side and a no brokerage relationship with the other side? Is that combination acceptable? Okay, so let's review. Single agent relationship means alliance with one side, and the no brokerage relationship means you're just no representation. You're just taking care of the paperwork for the other side. Is that combination acceptable? The answer is yes. And actually, this is the only acceptable combination that can be made with a single agent relationship. So if you already have a single agent relationship with one side, the only other way that you can assist the other side is to take care of the what for them? The paperwork. And you have to let them know. You have to tell them, hey, listen, I'm not representing you. I'm just handling paperwork, contracts. I represent this side. I have alliance. I'm going to look out for their best interests, just so you know. So I'll prepare the documents for you because you need help with it, but I'm looking out for their best interests. So just understand that. Yes. Of course. Yes, you can. And I get this question all the time. If you're just taking care of the contracts, is it a flat fee that you have to charge? The sky's the limit. And Florida does not limit how much money you charge, what your commission is going to be, if you charge a commission or a flat fee, off of a real estate transaction. You can charge whatever you want. Everything in real estate is what? Negotiable between all parties involved. That is going to be a common theme. Everything's negotiable. Contracts, commission, compensation. Do you have a question?
Unbelievable, you're taking advantage of someone.
No. Nope. It's negotiable. And we'll see that later on as we continue. Now I get to test you again. First of all, I want to share something with you. This is page 73. We discussed all of this already back on the previous page, but I want to share something specific. Even though there's 3 relationships and you can choose any one of those 3, let's review. No brokerage, taking care of the paperwork, transaction broker. Is there representation? Yeah. You're a facilitator. You can represent both sides. And single agency, you choose one side, alliance with that one side. Okay, fiduciary. There's one relationship that is most commonly used, and it's automatically assumed in the state of Florida. So that means if you don't specify the relationship, you are automatically a what? Look, under Florida law, it's presumed all licensees operate as what? Transaction brokers. It's at the bottom of page 73. If you need to move up, you can. We have extra seats here. Okay. On the next page, page 74, lock this in. Class exam highlight. Okay. Here we go. Let me create a hypothetical for you guys. You tell me how to navigate it. What's acceptable, what's not acceptable, that sort of thing. Because this is a typical state exam question you might encounter, or you might even see it in real life. You have a single agent relationship with the seller. And by chance, a buyer walks into the brokerage office. You're the first person to greet them. This buyer is looking for the exact specifications that you just listed in the seller's property, the one that you're representing. And they also want you to assist them with a single agent relationship. So you have single with the seller, single with the buyer. Can you bring these 2 parties together legally, complete the transaction, make a commission off of both sides? Based on what we learned. I just mentioned to you, if I can review once again, you have a single agent relationship with the seller, single agent relationship with the buyer. Can you bring these 2 parties together within the same transaction? No, this would be an illegal what? Dual agency. Think of a spy, right? Spy movie. You try to have alliance with both sides. How can you ethically do this? It is illegal. You cannot, because you have fiduciary with that individual you have the single agent relationship with. Okay. Let's switch it up. You tell me what you think. You have a single agent relationship with the seller, once again, and your coworker, a co-agent, they have a single agent relationship with the buyer. Now, can you collaborate with one another to complete the real estate transaction? The answer is no. Because you're both working for the same what? And remember, the agreement is not with you and your coworker and that those buyers and sellers. No, the buyer and seller have representation with the brokerage company. So it's still an illegal what? Dual agency. You can't do it. We're getting the hang of it now. Let's switch it up again. Let's say you're representing the seller, single agent, for ABC Realty. The buyer is being represented, single agent, with XYZ Realty. Now, can you collaborate with one another with no conflict? The answer is yes. It's two separate brokerage companies. There's no issue. Nothing preventing you legally from doing that. But once again, who would want to outsource their business to another brokerage company just so they can make this arrangement happen? You want to complete the deal in-house, but you have this single agent relationship with these parties, and legally you can't bring them together. So what can you do? Can you change the relationship? The answer is yes, but let me ask you a question. Which relationship is most suitable for what we're trying to accomplish? Of course, the transaction broker relationship, where you can facilitate for both sides, remain neutral, make a commission off of both sides. So the question is, why wouldn't you select that from the very beginning to avoid this issue? That's besides the point I'm trying to make here, but some food for thought. Once again, can you switch the relationship? Yes, you can. And there's only one document that must be signed by both parties for you to accomplish this. It's right here on the next page. I think this is page 75. Yes, it is. And it's in this paragraph right here. It says, to gain principal's written consent to change the relationship, buyer or the seller or both must sign what agreement? You have to remember this agreement. To what? Yeah, let's break down the name that we encounter here. You're getting consent. What does consent mean? Permission. Yeah, which Diddy didn't get. Okay, I'm just not going to get into that. You're getting consent to transition, which means to what? To change, switch to what relationship? Doesn't that make sense? You're getting permission to switch to the transaction broker relationship. That's all this document is. You get it signed. You can't do this verbally. You must get this signed. I want to be clear on that. But once you get it signed, you can switch and then complete the deal by being a transaction broker for both sides. Facilitate, make your commission. Any questions here? Is it making sense? Any questions about those three relationships? All right, we're coming up to a break. Just bear with me. We're almost there. A few more minutes. Go to page 77. Several questions here. 3 questions. You can highlight the first 2 to start with. We see the Brokerage Relationship Disclosure Act. What is this all about? It says for residential sale transactions, this rule exists that requires disclosure of the relationship that you select. You remember the 3 relationships, right? So you'll see it says applies, mandates, duties, obligations. We talked about those obligations for each relationship are presented in all real estate transactions, residential and non-residential. However, written disclosures are required only for what? Only for what? Residential sale transactions. You need to know this. This is what you're going to be tested on. This is important. What is a residential sale transaction? We know how to identify residential. We talked about it yesterday. The simple way to identify residential property is how many units? 4 units or what? Less on how many acres? 10 acres or less. That's confirmed for us on those bullet points. It confirms what we wrote down yesterday. So if we're talking about a residential sale transaction, we're talking about the sale of residential property, the sale of 4 units or less on 10 acres or less. That's exactly what's on these bullet points. You have to understand, what was that? Scam. There you go. So once again, when you're selling residential property, The rule is you have to disclose the relationship you're entering into with that buyer and or seller and the duties that you owe them within the relationship. You have that list for reference, but now we know how to identify residential sale transactions. Once again, it confirms what we wrote down yesterday. They go a step further and give you examples. Aren't these the same examples we talked about yesterday? Single family, condos, townhouses, duplex, triplex, quadruplex. What is not considered to be a residential sale? Look what it has here. Class exam question. Yes, non-residential, such as business opportunities, lease agreements. That's not a residential sale, that's a lease. And it says, furthermore, brokerage relationship disclosure documents are not required for the auction or appraisal of real estate. Interesting. Anyhow, class exam question, highlight this. Take a note of it. Any questions? Let's move on. Page 78. A few more minutes. We're almost actually done with this unit, if you can bear with me. So if we can use some common sense real quick, and I can bounce something off of you guys, you tell me what you think. When do you present this disclosure of the relationship you're entering into and all the duties you owe them within the relationship? What's the common sense answer when you present this information? When do you do that? Yeah, actually, that's very interesting you say that, because that's how the book defines it. They say, upon initial meeting, does it make sense to whip out a contract on somebody? Not always the case, but before you start doing any work, essentially. I think that's the simplest explanation. Before you start listing a seller's property, you need to figure out what relationship you're going to proceed with, right? Get them to sign before you can put it in the MLS, the multiple listing service, which gets blasted on Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, and so forth. Okay. And same thing on the buyer side. Before you take them shopping and drive them around to 20 different properties, make sure that you establish the relationship, the agreement, right? The buyer brokerage agreement with the relationship that you're proceeding with. And then also 90% of the buyers that you're going to be working with are going to use what? A loan, financing to acquire the property, right? You remember this statistic? And that's why I mentioned you should consider getting the mortgage license in addition to your real estate license, because you know that 90% of the buyers that you're going to be working with are going to utilize financing to buy. So if that's the case, you need to ask them the question, are you buying it cash? Or is this going to be financed? If it's going to be financed, then what's the follow-up request? What do you need from that buyer? A pre-approval letter saying that they qualify for X amount of loan, right? And then you take them shopping. Otherwise, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but it kind of is. Because you don't want to go backwards and say, now let's do that process and find out that they don't qualify for the amount that they thought they qualified for, right? So it says disclosure requirements. It says this could be a separate document or a part of another document. You'll see it here, such as a listing or a buyer brokerage agreement. Could be separate or part of another. Any questions about this? Okay. We talked about these three already. Any questions about these three relationships? Which one is automatically assumed in the state of Florida?
Okay.
Yes, and that's revealed to us once again. All licensees are to operate as transaction brokers, which is the one that we like. So good. And if you're switching the relationship, remember it has to be signed. We talked about that. How long must you retain records for? Check this out on line 33. How many years? 5 years. If I can give you a quick reference to something, for IRS, they require 3 years. 3 years prior records for financials, because they can audit you up to 3 years prior. God forbid that happens to any of you, but I just wanted to share that real estate is always 5 years. So if you ever have a question about how long must you retain records for, it's 5 years. How long do you have to hold on to documents for? 5 years. Even if it's a failed transaction, because transactions fail all the time. Maybe it just didn't work out with this property and you want to continue shopping. What happens with the documents that you signed, the sale contract that was submitted and so forth, and it just fell through? You still have to retain those documents for 5 years because there could be a legal dispute later on, and the statute of limitations to take somebody to court is 5 years, up to 5 years back for the alleged offense. Look, if the transaction fails to close, you still have to retain it. You place it in a dead or fail to close file. I just mentioned that to you. Must still be retained, and retain it for how many years? 5 years. Perfect. Can you store documents electronically? Yeah, I mean, that's how we store documents nowadays, on a terabyte hard drive in the cloud. It used to be when I got my real estate license and eventually became a broker, I had to have a physical filing cabinet with documents that I would have to pull up, make copies of, distribute to my agents so that they can utilize it for whatever circumstance. And I had to make sure that those documents were up to date. So I had to constantly look on the website and make sure that they were the most up-to-date, documents to be utilized. It was a little bit nerving, right? Making sure that you're not liable for presenting outdated agreements. But now everything is digital, and it's it's seamless and easy to update them. Here's examples of what these disclosure forms look like. If you want to look through it later on tonight, they're very simple, but I want us to move on to page 80. And once again, you mentioned upon initial meeting, it would make sense to present the agreement. That's what the book will tell you, but initial meeting is not always practical. When you first introduce yourself to somebody, you're probably not going to whip out a contract for them to sign. You're going to scare the crap out of them, and they're probably not going to sign with you. So that's why these exceptions to the rule exist. It says 6 situations that do not create a brokerage relationship are as follows and do not require you to whip out a contract on them. Buyer representation agreement, listing contract. There are more, but these are the 4 most important. The first is they are already being represented by another agent. Then it's not your relationship to enter into. Don't step on anybody else's toes, butt out. The next is if you're in a model home or open house. Have you ever seen those signs that real estate agents display? They say open house this Saturday, or they put balloons on signs and are directing traffic to whatever they're hosting on the weekend. What's the purpose of an open house? An open house, do you know? An open house, most people think that it's to look for a buyer for that particular property, but usually the chances of you finding a buyer on the weekend by hosting an open house for that specific property, it's very unlikely. Statistics are against you, but you do it for a few other reasons. You do it for marketing, so you can get your name out there. People know that you're doing business in the neighborhood. You're actively working towards something, and people might see that and admire that and want to list their property with you because they see your hustle. Also, when you have buyers that come in that might not be interested in buying that property, the fact that they're there that day means that they're what? They're what? They're looking around, and you want to know who that person is. So that's why when you walk through the front door, if they're a smart real estate agent, they say, oh, make sure you what? Sign in, put your contact information so they can solicit you and say, hey, I noticed that you walked out and you weren't interested in this property, but what attracted you to the open house that day? Was it the size, the location, schools, or what was it? Could I help you find some options that probably more so fit your criteria? Yeah, I could. If I could just, I have your email. I'll send you options if that's okay. Are they being represented, right? These are the questions you ask. Anyhow, so you're not going to whip out a contract in the open house, is what I'm saying. Casual encounters. you're at a grocery store, Publix, you're not going to whip out a contract in the produce aisle. And if they're asking for factual information regarding the property, like maybe they call you up and they say, oh, I see you're listing this property in so-and-so area. Is the master bedroom or the primary bedroom on the first floor? Well, I love to tell you, but I actually need to email you this agreement for you to electronically sign that says I'm representing you before I share this information. Does that make sense? No. So openly share this information. It's facts. It's factual information. Share it. And it doesn't require you to represent them, is what I'm saying. Any questions here? Okay. Let me just make sure we're good. Okay. One of the last subjects that we're going to discuss, non-residential transactions. Do you remember yesterday when I shared with you the importance of being able to identify what residential property is? Because we discussed that most of the laws that were established, created, enacted were initially established to protect people that are buying property to live in, which is what type of property? Where do people reside? In residential property, correct? And I said, most of the time when you learn a law or some sort of rule, you're probably going to learn the exception to that rule. And 9 times out of 10, the exception to the rule is when we're not talking about what type of property. Residential, because the laws were created for residential. So therefore, if we're not talking about residential, the same rules do not what? Do not apply. Here's evidence of this right in front of us. And I mentioned we're going to see it time and time again. In a what type of transaction? Look what I'm highlighting. Where the buyer and seller have assets of $1 million or more, the broker, at requests of buyer and seller, may designate 2 sales associates to act as single agents for both sides in the same transaction. So in a residential transaction, this would be an illegal what? Dual agency. But because it's non-residential, the same rules do not what? Do not apply. You'll see that here on the next page. It says in a residential transaction, this would be an illegal dual agency. Any questions? So one broker can assign 2 of their sales associates to act as single agents for both sides in the same transaction. In residential, that's illegal. That's a dual agency. But in non-residential, it's acceptable. So that's just one example we encounter. We're going to see several. And the last thing for this unit on page 83, and then we'll take a break. Up until now, we've been talking about the various types of relationships, the duties within, obligations within the relationships, and how to enter those relationships. But now let's talk about how to get out of these relationships. And we're talking about what specifically starts with the T. And of course, when you hear the word termination, you probably think of something negative. It's common to feel that way, but termination in real estate is not necessarily negative. Termination in real estate means to end, not necessarily to cancel or to break. So what are we describing here? We're describing ending, write that down, ending a brokerage relationship. And just like any relationship, we can end nicely or not so nicely, okay? So let's talk about the various ways to end. The state exam might ask you, what's the best way to end the relationship? And I would say it's the first bullet point, which starts with the letter F. It's what? Fulfillment. Isn't fulfillment the best way to end? It means everybody got what they what? Wanted. Buyer said they would buy, they bought it. Seller said they would sell, they sold it. We got paid our commish, we all walk away what? Happy. It's the best way to end things. But there's various ways to end, so let's go through it together. The next one is mutual agreement. It's not working out for me. I know it's not working out for you either. Let's just go our separate ways. It's not you. It's me. Don't use that cliche line, but you understand what I'm saying, right? Expiration. The time is expired. That's going to be detailed in your agreement, okay? How long the relationship will persist for. Broker walks away. They might be losing any commissions that they were entitled to if they stuck it out, if they stuck with it. Principal walks away. They might owe money to the brokerage company, even if the transaction does not close. Because detailed in a listing agreement, for instance, imagine the listing agreement is for 6 months. So I'm going to give you 6 months to try to find a buyer for this property. But the seller tries to end the agreement in 3 months. Well, you didn't give me all the time that we agreed to. And I anticipated finding a buyer within the time that I proposed to you. And I had some marketing strategies I was going to implement, whatever the case may be. I'm just giving you a hypothetical. Maybe they spent money already to market the property. We're talking about professional photography and all of these things that go into listing a property and making it look beautiful before you put it on the market. So if you try to end early, maybe the agreement states that there's a penalty based on that. And you can specify that in your agreements as well. Maybe for advertising, marketing expenses, you want to get reimbursed for that. The next three are very easy to understand: death, and destruction. If anybody dies, can you force somebody to complete a contract from beyond the grave? No. If the property is destroyed, can you force somebody to buy it or proceed with the transaction if it was wiped out by Hurricane Helene or Milton? No, it would terminate the relationship. And the last is a big B, which is what? Bankruptcy would obviously terminate the relationship with a buyer or seller. Think about if you're representing a seller listing their property, but then they file for bankruptcy. They shouldn't have anything to sell. They forfeit their assets. Working with a buyer, that's going to terminate the relationship because they shouldn't have any money. They're bankrupt. So what are we doing here, right? Unless it's bankruptcy fraud, that would be a different case, and you don't want to touch that. Any questions associated with this? All right. We're actually done with this unit. And I want you guys to take a quick 10-minute break. Be back at 7:10, okay? Stretch out, grab a snack, make a phone call, do what you got to do. And then we're going to continue.
In an era where online education often falls short, there's an oasis transforming the digital learning landscape. Welcome to Cameron Academy. With our AI-powered platform, we're not just changing the game, we're rewriting the rules. At Cameron Academy, we're not just elevating education, we're lifting learners to new heights. Our comprehensive video lessons and AI tutors simplify complex real estate concepts. At Cameron Academy, we do more than prepare you for your exams. We equip you with the essential knowledge for a successful career in real estate. Break away from the traditional. Think computerized exams, a convenient study app at your fingertips, and AI support. But wait, that's not all. Live chat support when you need it, AI-driven text-to-speech content, your own personal AI tutor, and instant online certifications. This isn't just education. This is the future. We're reimagining what it means to ascend to success in the real estate industry. Choose Cameron Academy, the oasis of innovative learning. Your journey to success starts here.
and impose their authority upon the public. When can they regulate the public? Based on the following reasons. If the unregulated practice can harm the public, if the public is not adequately protected, or if there's no other restriction available, they can use their authority. On line 9, another fact. DeBeeper operates under what branch of the governor? Yes, something you could be tested on. I saw this on my state exam, by the way. Chapter 455 of the Florida statutes, which we know about, we saw earlier, even today, gives them authority to do what? Well, investigate consumer complaints, issue court orders to get witness testimony when conducting investigations, issue cease and desist orders to people that are practicing real estate without a license, and issue citations to individuals licensed by DeBeeper. Another fact, you should highlight this. The chief administrator of the DeBeeper is also the what of the DeBeeper? What does it say on line 15? Secretary. But who are they chosen by? Each new governor gets to choose and must be confirmed by the state. Yes, exactly. Or Florida Senate, same difference. And where's their main office located? You'll see this on line 17. Unfortunately, Tallahassee. Okay. It should be Orlando. Let's agree to that right now. Our capital should be Mickey Mouse, right? Anyhow, you don't have to know everything on this organizational chart. I'm just going to show you the most important components. This is just to give you an overview. So you can read through it if you wish, but it's just not relevant, all of it. Go to page 47. And we can see more so the delegation of authority for DeBeeper and the divisions within. We see an important division that we should know about, division of professions, which does what? Regulates educational courses and license examinations for each profession under DeBeeper. Yep. So who do they have a contract with to administer the Florida real estate exam? Who do you schedule your state exam with? Yes, Pearson View. Good job. So that's Division of Professions' responsibility to maintain that contract. Division of Service Operations, look, you'll see right here. Central Intake Unit that processes real estate license what? Applications and fees. So when you submit your application, yes, you submit it on myfloridalicense.com. myfloridalicense.com. This is on the handout as well, the flyer. And that's DeBeeper's website, the Florida Licensing Authority. We know this. We talked about that already. But this unit within processes license applications and, of course, collects those fees. We'll come back to Division of Florida Condos, Timeshares, Mobile Homes in a later unit. Division of Real Estate, DRE, not Dr., not Dre Beats. But we talked about DRE providing support services to the commission and DeBeeper. And they operate under DeBeeper. If you remember this is a division within DeBeeper. So if you are employed by the Division of Real Estate, which interesting enough, and we talked about this yesterday, their headquarters is located where? Downtown Orlando. And that's actually where the meetings for FREC are hosted, in the Division of Real Estate's headquarters. Convenient for us if you want to attend one of these meetings. It's not like it's Miami or Tallahassee, God forbid. But anyhow, check this out. They offer, it says support services, but what does that actually mean? Ministerial duties, administrative duties, clerical functions. What does that mean? They're pencil pushers, guys. They're processing paperwork, essentially. And some of the paperwork that they process are complaints that are submitted against real estate professionals for violations of real estate license law. So the Division of Real Estate are the first eyes on complaints that are submitted against real estate licensees. And depending on how severe, FREC might see it. Because remember, FREC only sees the most severe penalties and violations of real estate license law. We talked about that already. Okay, that's one way to think about it. And once again, their headquarters, Orlando, Florida. Let's continue on. If you go to the next page, page 48. Let's learn more about FREC. First of all, when was FREC established? 19 what? 25, because a law was established. Yes, and they were created later, 2 years later, to do what with the law? Of course, administer and enforce the law. This is their purpose, we know that. And how do they enforce the law? By regulating all of us, real estate professionals, real estate licensees in Florida. And you'll see that confirmed. They protect the general public by regulating all of us. That's it. You can thank them for the fact that you're taking a 63-hour Florida real estate license course in order to be licensed. If you think that's a lot of time, it's not. Didn't I mention Texas? Texas is is 3 times what you have to commit to in order to get your real estate license in Florida. 180 hours in they say everything's bigger in Texas. Apparently, so are so is the education. But it depends on the state. So New York is like 75 hours. California is 135 hours. And you have to take it at an accredited university. I don't know how that's correlated. But I mean, Florida's big. And we're the most moved to state in the nation, but only 63 hours, which is great for now. Honestly, if I'm being fair, I do think it should be more hours. Not that I want to teach more hours. Okay, I do not. 63 hours is enough. Imagine 180 hours or 135 hours. That's a lot. But it's more hours to become a truck driver than it is to get your real estate license in Florida. Think about that. Truck drivers is like, to get your CDL is like 100 hours or whatever the case may be. 63 hours to help somebody make the biggest financial commitment they've ever made in their entire life. Probably should be more, but that's just me thinking out loud. I don't want to put myself out of business, but anyhow, you get what I'm saying. Composition and qualifications. If you know all of FREC's responsibility, we kind of talked about this briefly, right? Regulate tens of thousands of real estate professionals in the state of Florida. Maybe it's something that intrigues you because you like positions that have that degree of authority. Maybe you're interested in becoming a FREC member. Is that one of you? Maybe, okay? Maybe you're thinking it's going to bring you more business because of the prestige that comes with being a FREC member. But I would say that it probably won't, because before taking this class, did you know who frickin' FREC was? You probably didn't know who FREC was. And the average buyer or seller, if you put it on a business card and hand them the business card and you wait for their reaction, like, oh, by the way, I don't know, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm a FREC member. It's kind of a big deal. They're like, yeah, great for you. And it's like, are you going to help me sell my house? Or like, anyhow, it's probably not going to bring you more business, but you have to know what makes you qualified to hold this position as one of the FREC members. First of all, how many total members exist? 7. We talked about this yesterday, right? The number of members vary from state to state. Like, for instance, North Carolina is like 9, and Texas, I think, is 12. So every state has their own real estate commission. I said TREC, right? The Texas Real Estate Commission. There's 12 members of there, but we found some way to make it work with only 7 individuals. You're thinking, how do 7 individuals handle regulation of tens of thousands of licensees? It's because I mentioned to you, they only see the most severe. The first eyes on any complaint violation goes to Division of Real Estate. Then it goes to FREC, depending on how severe it is. That's what takes place during these meetings. We'll see more about that in just a moment. But 4 of them are active what? Who have been licensed for at least how many years? 5. One of them can be an active sales associate or broker who have been licensed for at least how many years? Yep. 2 of them are consumer members, people who have never had a real estate what? License. Obviously, that's important, right? The average consumer's opinion on rules, regulations, laws that are implemented, imposed upon the public. It does affect the public. And at least one has to be how old? Yeah, little seniority. But really, it's so you have somebody who's been around, who's seen changes in the market and understanding how laws might affect certain things that have happened over time. Term of office. First of all, who gets to choose? So that means you have to have a good relationship with Ron DeSantis to be considered for this position. Good luck with that. And confirmed by the state Senate. And how long of a term can you serve?
There is no.
4-year staggered terms. So that's 4 years on, 4 years off, 4 years on, 4 years off, as many times as you wish. But just like the president, just like the governor, go to the next page, line 1, may not serve more than how many consecutive back-to-back 4-year terms? Yes, that's easy to remember because that's the same as the governor. And it makes sense because every new governor gets to choose their own 7. And I've been asked to be a part of the Florida Real Estate Commission 2 other times, and I humbly declined that offer just because it wasn't the right time for me to do it. But I just submitted my name for consideration for this next term of office for DeSantis. Maybe they don't reconsider, but maybe people drop out, and we'll see what happens. And I'm just now venturing into politics. Not that it existed in my family's history whatsoever. It's a lot of learning along the way, but I ran for mayor in the city of Winter Park in 2024. And we ran a very successful campaign. And despite the loss, I had no political experience whatsoever. I'm a business outsider. And I was going against the incumbent who has served in the commission for many moons. And I got 30% of the votes with not being a known commodity in that space. So that was exciting, and it definitely I got the bug now. So being a part of the Florida Real Estate Commission is seeing things at a higher level and seeing how things operate from Tallahassee down, because Winter Park is very local. It's only a resident, maybe a population of 30,000, 29,000 residents. So a very small city. Anyhow. Thanks. Not that you guys care about that, but anyhow, I appreciate it. Next campaign, I'm going to tap you guys on the shoulder to help me out and sign wave for me. If you don't honk from Michael. Okay. Anyhow, commission members do not receive a salary. Okay. So maybe you're thinking, man, such a prestigious position. They probably are paid handsomely for all of their efforts. No. They're not receiving a salary. They're not government employees. They receive $50 per day per diem plus reimbursement for out-of-pocket expenses such as travel accommodations and meals. Not Disney tickets. Okay, that would be nice, but you can't. Yeah, so only $50 per day when you're on official business. But how often are you on official business? How often do they meet? Once. Yeah, exactly. Look, it's right here. Meetings are held each month in the headquarters for the Division of Real Estate, which we know is where? Can you attend this meeting as the outside public? Yeah. If you have a license, can you get some credit towards if you're due for your CE, then yes. How many hours credit per renewal cycle? Yep, you got it. Any questions about this? Now let's talk about their authority. Commission's general powers and duties are divided into 3 areas of responsibility. Executive, which means they have control over your license. Write that down. And we actually wrote that down yesterday as well. But that falls under executive power. So they have control over your license. How do they have control over your license? Well, aren't they responsible for the educational requirements to get a license or to renew your license? Yeah. So that means if you don't meet the educational requirements, they can deny you getting a license. Adopt a seal doesn't mean they adopt the baby seal from SeaWorld. Okay. Adopt a seal means if they have to make a final decision, they call it a final order on any matter that takes place in their meeting, like a violation of real estate license law. They use a seal, a stamp that represents all of their signatures. So they adopt their signatures through the use of an official FREC seal. and they establish fees. So if you don't comply with that, then they can take away your license. They cannot renew your license. They cannot issue your license. Go to page, is that 50? Let's talk about quasi-legislative. What does the word quasi mean? Not Quasimodo, okay? Okay. Quasi is kind of. It's like almost, sort of, right? Quasi. Quasi-legislative means they can make, write this down. Make what? Yeah, so they put it together. They can kind of make laws. REC can kind of make laws. But what type of law? Thank you. Do you remember what administrative means? Administrative means what? License. Anytime you see the word administrative, it means license. So administrative law, that's license law, which we know is chapter what? 475 of the Florida statutes. I'm just going to repeat it again and again. And you'll see that here. Look, FS 475, right? Anyhow. So under that, you'll see it confirms they can create and pass rules and regulations, bylaws. We use a term to describe this. The creation, the enacting, the adoption of laws the term we use is promulgate. To promulgate means to adopt, to enact the laws. Maybe it's the first time you've heard of this, but it's called promulgate. You could see this for your homework tonight. You might see it on your state exam. So it's good terminology to know. By the way, I made flashcards for you guys, and that's available in the exam prep. So if you guys are struggling with the terminology or you want to practice, what it does is it's interactive. So it gives you the definition on one side. You have to try to guess what the term is, and then you can flip over the card and it reveals the answer to you. Yeah. So I did the work for you. It's in the exam prep. I'm telling you, and I'm not trying to oversell it, but it's the cheapest exam prep you can get. If you look for any other, there's nothing cheaper. So it's the first 3 days are free, and then it's only $10 a month after that. And you can cancel at any time. How long is it going to take you to pass the state exam and get your license? Is it going to take you more than a month? Probably not, right? Probably going to get a license quicker than that. So maybe you spend only $10 to use the exam prep. That's what I'm saying. So just something to consider. You can start right now. So if you want to practice, it's the best practice you can get. And also, what we're highlighting are the most important parts of the unit. I mentioned that to you. That's why you're highlighting it, because it's relevant for your exams and what you need to know to protect yourself and others within real estate transactions. For the exam prep, I basically took all the highlights, just the key points, exactly what you need to know and study for the state exam for each unit. So instead of 15 or 20 pages for the unit and reading through all of that, because I know some of you have read ahead, and please try not to read ahead. I think that's some good advice I can give you, because then you'll start to get overwhelmed. Give me an opportunity to simplify it for you rather than just reading the entire thing. And to take it a step further, for the exam prep, I did the work for you guys. I consolidated it. So instead of 20 pages, I made it 2 or 3 pages, just key points. And you can translate it to any language as well. It's a web app. So you can get access to it through your user account. And I think we even send an email as well. Every student gets it because it's that good. Okay, it's just that good. It has flashcards, it has audio files. So you can listen to it while you're working out, on the go. If you have a long commute to work, taking your kids to school, that's there. It's all of the interfaces, audio, visual, interactive. It has hundreds, but maybe like 600-700 practice questions, answers, and explanations for each one. Practice questions are the best way to prepare for the state exam, by the way. You know what you're going to be tested on for the classic exam. Sorry, I have like either a piece of corn or a hair or something. Yeah. And then also I put math videos. So we talked about math, right? I recorded myself, even though you're probably not going to be tested on all of the math that I recorded I made it available to you guys. So if hearing it one time is not good enough, you can watch it as many times as you wish. Again and again, you can pause it, rewind it, say, okay, what step did he do here? Oh, I see what he did, and then progress. And then once you get the hang of it, you can do practice questions, make sure that you can apply what you learn in the videos, and then watch it again and again and again. That's there. Yeah, we do make that available. It's in your user account. So if you log into your account, and it should be in the email that we sent to you guys, like the welcoming email. But most students do this. Most students, what they do is we sell bundles. Maybe you didn't even see this as an issue because we're redesigning the website because it's just not visible. But we sell bundles, which means that we not only offer the pre-licensed course tuition, but if you buy the exam prep and your first renewal, you save money. Most people do that because they're thinking, once I get the license, I'm going to have to do the renewal anyway. Why not save money and have access to it and just knock it out whenever I want? So we do that. But what I can do for you guys is because we're revamping the website, it's not easily observable. I'll still extend that same discount to you guys for the post-license course. And then the exam prep is what it is. First 3 days are free and then $10 a month after that. Okay? Any questions? If I have some time, I'll give you a demo of what's in it. Sorry. Gosh, how annoying. All right. They also regulate professional practices based on those laws that they kind of make license law, if you remember that. Now let's move on to quasi-judicial. Quasi means kind of. Judicial means they can judge you. Yeah, so what does that mean? They can kind of judge you. Kind of judge you. I know it's weird to hear that, but what does that actually mean? Well, look at what we have. How can they kind of judge you? They grant or deny applications for licensure. That's how they can judge you. Based on criminal history, right? Based on compliance with completing educational courses. They can suspend your license, revoke your license, impose administrative fines. What does administrative mean? License fines, yep. And they can make determinations of violations that are committed by a licensee. Hope I can get that out, man. That's annoying. All right, let's move on. Go to page 51. And we're going to change subjects kind of drastically here and talk about license renewal. You see it? No matter who you are, if you have a real estate license in the state of Florida, if one was issued to you, your license can only expire on one of two dates. The dates are in front of you. I want you to highlight these two dates. Either March what? Or September what? No matter who you are. My goal is to show you what your expiration date is going to be based on when you pass the state exam. And before I show you the shortcut, because there's a simple way to figure it out, and you'll get the hang of it. I'll give you several examples. I want you to know the rule. The rule is this. Your initial license, what does initial license mean? Yeah, when you pass the state exam, get that first license that's emailed to you, right? That initial license is good for at least how many months? And cannot go over how many months? Remember, you're late by 1 day. What happens to your license? Null and void. You must requalify, start all over again, the 5 steps that we already reviewed. So that's why it's important to do it way ahead of schedule, and then you have that peace of mind. So let me give you some examples. You tell me what you think about it. Let me see if they fixed the whiteboard here. No whiteboard. Interesting. All right, I'll give you several examples. Let me see if I have some space. I'll just do it right here at the bottom margin. Let's rewrite those, and you should write this on a separate sheet of paper. What are the two expiration dates again? So March 31st or September 30th. Come on. Just makes me look weird when I do it. All right. Those are the two expiration dates no matter what. Let me give you some examples, and I'm going to show you the shortcut. Let's say you pass your state exam on, I'll use my son's birthday, August 13th in the year 2024. When would this license expire? Uh-oh. Somebody calling? Bye-bye. Okay. Yeah. When would this license expire? We'll look up here. This is a shortcut. It's got to be one of these two dates, no matter what, right? We've already established that. Out of those two options, which one out of those two is the closest to August 13th without going past August 13th? September is past.
Oh,
It's going to be what? March 31st, and of what year? 2026. Does this fall within 18 to 24 months? Yes. Add it up and you'll find out. And you can always check your work and you can always add it up and find out. But I can assure you that it is. I'll give you another example. You'll get the hang of it. Let's say you pass your state exam on my birthday, which I'm accepting gifts right now. I like wine. Your birthday? Well, happy birthday. We're getting close. So this is your present. Getting your real estate license, right? I love the investment you're making in yourself right before your birthday. I always get like super motivated right before my birthday as well. You're a Scorpio. I get it. We get it. Yeah, I understand. Anyhow, let's say this could be a realistic pass date for you. November 15th, 2024. When would your license expire? It's got to be either one of these two, no matter what. Out of those two options, what's the closest we can get to November 15th without going past? It'll be September. September is before. It doesn't go past. And it'll be September what? 30th? And of what year? 2026. Are you getting the hang of it? I'll give you another example. Let's say you pass your state exam September 29th, 2024. When would that license expire? I don't know what I did here, but anyhow, you get it. September 29th. So what's the closest we can get to September 29th without going past? Yeah. Why can we not choose September 30th of 2026? That means you'd go over 24 months, 2 years. By one day, your license would be null and what? Void, and you'd have to requalify as if you've never had a license. So you have to go back to March what? 31st and of 2026. Last example, let's say you pass your state exam on my other son's birthday, which is March, I got to think for a second, March 6th. Uh-oh, yeah, March 6th. And let's say the year 2025. When would that license expire? The closest we can get to March 6th without going past is, yes, September 30th. But of what year? 2026. Why can we not use September 2027? It will be over 2 years. Add it up, you'll find out that it is. So you can always check your work with 18 to 24 months. But that's just for your first renewal. You see how the first renewal is a little bit wonky? But once you figure out your expiration date, it's going to be every 2 years on the same date thereafter. Exactly 2 years on the same date. So let me ask you a question. What's going to be the next expiration date of this license? September what? 30th, but what year? 2028. What's going to be the next expiration? September 30th. It's crazy to see that. But let me ask you a question, a follow-up question. From the date you pass your state exam to your first expiration date, what class needs to be completed? Yes, exactly, which is a 45-hour class. What about between these two dates, your first expiration and your next one? Your CE, exactly, continue education. And the next one? CE, every 2 years. You got it? As long as you have your license, every 2 years. That's it. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. And that's easy to follow because you might be tested on this for your state exam. Now, you're thinking, okay, well, isn't my expiration date going to be on my license? Yes, it is. So why do I need to learn this, Michael? If it's going to be on the license and they issue me the license, I can see it. Because in order to get the license, they're going to test you on this. You understand? And they want to make sure you understand when your expiration date is, and you can calculate it on your own, just so you can keep track of it and be proactive and take care of your education and pay your renewal fees. Let's talk about the only group that receives an exception to the rule. Group. Who is it? Military. If you're on active duty with the U.S. military, you're not required to renew your license while you're serving our country. But once you are discharged, look what it says. You have within how much time of discharge to take care of your renewal? Page 52, line 3. 2 years. Plenty of time. All right. Let's switch it up. Let's talk about active versus inactive status. But didn't we discuss this yesterday? Yeah. What's the only acceptable status to provide real estate services for compensation? Active. So when you pass a state exam, can you just start selling real estate and make money? No, you have to make your license active first by finding a what? An employer, broker, or a what? Owner, developer. Perfect. I'm just reviewing with you guys. And you'll see that it's confirming the same thing right here, guys. It's the same thing we talked about yesterday. There's 2 types of inactive status, though. We discussed voluntary already. Do you remember voluntary? Willingly inactive. It's when you pass the state exam and you're just sitting on your license, not doing anything with it. If you're not practicing, you're just renewing your license, but you're not actually participating in the business, you can just have voluntary and active, and that's okay. You still have to complete your renewal. Okay. Let's talk about involuntary. When is that going to occur? Involuntary, it means what? Not willingly, right? Something happens outside of your control that causes your license to be inactive. When would that occur? There's only one example. If you fail to what? There you go. That's what you need to know. Fail to renew. But we're not talking about the first renewal. Look what it says. Doesn't it say other than the first renewal? Because if you're late for your first renewal, the most important renewal, null and void, have to start all over again. We're talking about what renewal? Your CE. Exactly, continuing education. So here we have some information regarding this. It says, when your license is involuntary and active, late to complete your CE by 12 months or what? Less. What do they make you do to get back on track? Yes. Pay your renewal fee, and also they charge you a late fee. Actually, I think that was on a previous page, if I'm not mistaken. Did I miss it? A licensee renews after the expiration. Oh, it's right here back on the previous page. Page 51, line 39. Look what it says. It says, if a licensee fails to renew after the expiration date, a what fee is charged? And they're going to put your license automatically on what status? Involuntary and active. Didn't we just talk about that? Okay. All right. That's just confirming what we're talking about right now. Now, if you go to the bottom of page 52, the second bullet point, line 43. Uh-oh, what just happened? This is directly plugged in. How odd. The people online are going crazy right now. They're like, head is whipping around. I think we're good. I think it's... Okay. Inshallah, we're good. All right, let's move on. If you're over 12 months late for your CE, but less than what? 2 years, what do they make you do? I'm going to simplify it for you. Just write this down. Write this down. Double everything. Yes. Instead of 14 hours, what's double? Yep. Exactly. They double your fees, double your late fines. But you still haven't lost your license yet. Your license is not null and void yet. I mean, you're giving you a lot of slack, right? What if you go over 2 years late for your CE? Now your license is null and what? Yeah. So over 2 years late, you lose your license. Unless you can prove, look on line 8 of the next page. Unless you can prove what?
Physical hardship.
Physical or economic hardship. Didn't we talk about that? Okay. Let's talk about null and void and when that might occur. There's some examples here. We already know a couple of examples in regard to renewal. The first one says, if you're over 2 years involuntary inactive, your license becomes null and void. We just got done talking about that. If your license is revoked, and this is going to be based on disciplinary proceeding action, I want to tell you, not only will your license be null and void, but it's the most severe penalty FREC can impose against a licensee to revoke a license. Administrative penalty. And it's permanent. It means you can never get a license again in the state of Florida. But the question I get is, okay, well, what if you want to get a license in another state? Does this prevent you from getting a license in Georgia or whatever the case may be? It could, because you're going to have to submit an application in that state, and they're going to ask you if you had a license somewhere else or lost your license due to misconduct. Same thing when you apply, you'll see it online when you submit your applications. If you're late by 1 day for your first renewal, null and void. And if you cancel your license, you voluntarily give up your license, like retiring from the business. Oh no. What is going on here? Is that a sign? There we go. That's definitely on. Go. Particular here. Okay. Do this again. All right. Let's move on. Cease to be in force, not to be confused with involuntary and active. A lot of people confuse those two statuses. When does cease to be in force happen to your license? I want you to write this down. It's when you fail to notify either the beeper or FREC. That's when you would see this status occur for a real estate licensee. You fail to notify within the required renewal or notification period. So there's several things that you have to keep up to date, information that you need to provide, or if changes happen in your life, your address changes, whatever the case may be, they need a way to get in touch with you for license matters. So you have to keep it up to date, and they give you a time period to do so. And if you don't comply with that and they find out, they're going to put your license on cease to be enforced status. That means, are you allowed to practice real estate while your license ceases to be enforced? What do you think? No. Can you make money in the business helping people? No. Until you provide them with the current information and get back on track. Get back to active status. Active is the only appropriate status to participate in our business. So here's some examples. For instance, the beeper must be notified within 10 days of the following actions. If you change your address, or you change your employer, broker, instructor, school, real estate licensee, you change employer, the beeper has to be notified within how many days? What if it goes past 10 days, you didn't notify them and they found out? What status will they place you on until you provide them with the current information? Cease to be enforced. And voluntary inactive occurs when you fail to renew on time. This is when you fail to notify in time. So that's why people get confused. Then voluntary inactive cease to be enforced. I can see how it happens, but just be careful with that. And if you go to the next page, you must also keep your mailing address what with the state, with the beeper. Yeah, current. Says notify the beeper in writing if you change this information. Is a P.O. box considered to be an acceptable address, line 35? Yeah, because you're going to provide 2 addresses to the state when you apply. You're going to provide your physical address where you live and then where you want to receive mail. And you can use a P.O. box if you wish, but you have to keep that up to date. What if you stop paying for your P.O. box, it no longer exists? Then you got to let them know. But within how much time? Look, change of address within how many days? 10 calendar days. 10 calendar days. I know this is going to be easy for you guys to remember. How do I know that? Well, guess what? It's the same thing. Look up here as your driver's what? It's the same thing. Did you know it's the same time period? If you change your address, you got to update it with the DMV within 10 days. And if you get pulled over for speeding or whatever, and the officer notices that maybe it's an out-of-state address, and they say, is this your current address? You say, oh, no, I just moved. And they'll ask you, how long ago? They're salivating. They're waiting to write you a ticket if it's anything longer than 10 days. It's like a $200 ticket. And it's very simple to update, but you have to update it within this required time. And that's what you're going to be tested on for class exam question here. Also, how much of a fine? Yep. It used to be $500. Now it's $1,000 double. Go to the next page. What if you change residency? What does that mean? You move out of the state of Florida. You can live anywhere. It's not a requirement to live here to practice here, right? But you have to update your info. You have to let them know. Who do you let know? You'll see right here. It says any resident who becomes a non-resident must notify the commission, which is who? FREC, within 60 days. And of course, you're going to change your mailing address. So that's the beeper within 10 days. And if you don't, and FREC finds out, how much of a fine? 600. Used to be 300. Now it's double. Any questions? They're not playing. They're not messing around. I wish you would. All right. So where do you update this information? Do you have to send them a letter? All this? No, everything's online. Just the same account that you make when you apply for your license on DeBeeper's website, myfloridaLicense.com, is the same place where you would go to update your information. Just maintain, it says maintain my license, and then you update your mailing address. Very simple. Doesn't cost any money. Go to the next page at the bottom, change of what? You leave the employ of one to work for another. Can you take your business with you? It's not a trick question. Any business you bring to the brokerage company is whose business? So can you take your business with you? No. I wanted you guys to remember that and stick with that. That's going to be a theme, right? So any business you bring to the brokerage company, listings, right? Unless you close out your business before you leave them to work for another, you got to leave it behind. Unless you somehow get permission to take your business with you. I don't know of any broker that would do that, but I'm telling you, it's the brokerage company's business, because the agreement that you got your buyers and sellers to sign is with the brokerage company, not with you. Yes.
How they sell their house and they want you as their realtor, like, I mean.
The question is that you have, and that's a great question, can they follow you at their own free will? Yeah, as long as they properly terminate that agreement with that current broker to follow you. The follow-up question I would ask you to piggyback on that, which is a great question, can you persuade them to follow you to the next brokerage company? Can you influence their decision to follow you? No. You cannot. You can't divert customers, principals from the brokerage company you're leaving. Can you inform them that you're no longer with that brokerage company? Yeah, that's common courtesy. That's professional courtesy, right? But you just can't tell them to follow you. They can do that at their own free will. So hypothetical conversation, you say, hey, listen, by the way, I just want to let you know, I know it's unfortunate, but I'm no longer working for this brokerage company. I'm working for ABC Realty now. So I'm over here. I'm over this. No, my neck hurts, but just so you know, you could say if you want, but I'm this way. Just so you know, if you ever have questions, so there was a fly. You understand?
Like if the transaction is closed and then it's 5 years later and they're buying another.
Yeah, that's a completely different, it's a new agreement. It's a new relationship, right? So yeah, you can close out your business. So listings got to remain. Your fiduciary relationship, remember you have a fiduciary relationship with your employer. But what if you leave them to work for another? Do you still have fiduciary with your previous? The answer would surprise you. It's actually yes. But it's not that you're going to continuously bring business to your old employer. It just means you're not going to badmouth them. You're not going to slander their name. You're not going to divert potential clients away from them. That's what it means for that fiduciary relationship to continue. You're not going to steal trade secrets, confidential information that company has proprietary rights to, IP, intellectual property, and so forth. Methodology says you're bound by certain duties, from competition of transaction. Says do not divert, keep that allegiance. It's everything we talked about. Don't badmouth them, slander their names, steal secrets, keep information confidential, and be aware of non-compete clauses. They try to get rid of non-compete clauses. I think in the United States, if I'm not mistaken, it was legislation that was proposed, but I don't think it went through. I think it was appealed and they're still reviewing it. But non-compete means you can't work for certain competitors within a certain time frame. The time frame that's usually proposed is 1 year. It's very, very difficult to enforce any more than 1 year. That's just, I'm giving you the facts. Go to the bottom of that page, page 57, and you see a class exam question. This is our last subject of this unit. Multiple and group licenses. I'll give you a second to highlight that. All right, multiple licenses. What is this all about? I guess I can start by asking you some questions. You tell me what you think about it. Can a sales associate open up their own brokerage office?
No.
No. Can a broker associate?
No, associate, no.
No, because they downgraded. They're operating at the level of an associate. They're hanging their license underneath another broker, right? We know only real estate brokers can open up their own office. And as a real estate broker, you have certain flexibility that you won't get as an associate. Brokers can have multiple licenses. Let me give you some examples. Not only are they going to be issued a license for themselves, Michael Cameron real estate broker license, when I pass that state exam, I'm also issued a license for the company that I'm operating my brokerage company under, my entity. You know what an entity is? Business entity, like a LLC or a corporation. So I create an LLC to operate my business under for tax purposes and liability purposes. I have to register that business with the state, and they have to issue me a license for me to operate my brokerage, my real estate brokerage company under that entity. So that's another license. My location, my office is issued a license as well. I have to register my location with the state and make sure it complies with the rules for the office. There's certain requirements that offices must have. That's another license. I can have multiple locations. Every location has its own license. I can have a property management company and create a completely separate entity for doing property management services. That can be issued a license. I can be hired as a qualifying broker for another brokerage company. Imagine if there's a brokerage company based out of New York and they want to open up offices in Florida, but they don't have the license to operate out of Florida. Well, I can be the qualifying broker for their offices and still have my own businesses as well. Brokers have that flexibility. Associates cannot do that. As an associate, you only have one license issued in your legal name, and that's it. That's the difference. That's what multiple license is. Does that make sense? Okay. A broker's license. Remember, once you become a broker, sales associate no longer exists. You have the real estate broker's license. That's what it's called. Florida real estate broker. Not you're thinking of the membership maybe with the association, but that's just a membership. That's not a license. Yeah.
No, but they say like he doesn't have an agent just yet. If he sells, can you go out there?
Yeah. But you operate under your broker's license. And you can operate independently because you're a broker. You don't have to hang your license with any brokerage. You are the broker. I do it. That's what I do. The only reason, okay, if I'm being fair with you guys, the only reason why I have my broker's license is so I can run my own deals through my brokerage company and list it in the MLS because I'm flipping properties and I don't want to pay some other brokerage company to list it for me. I can just do it myself and then keep that commission in house, and that adds to the profits that I yield off of every single transaction. So that's why I do it. Anyhow, not that my agenda is to hire thousands of agents and take over the state of Florida. That's not. That is too much stress. I don't want to deal with that. Just want to flip properties, mind my own business, teach, get in front of groups of people, inspire, that sort of thing. Anyhow, group license status. I basically do my own deals so I can fund my collection addiction. I collect like sports memorabilia. I collect like numismatic stuff, which is like coins and currencies and stuff like that. I love that type of stuff. Some antiques, a little bit here and there. I'm weird. I'm very eclectic when it comes to that type of stuff. And dinosaur fossils. That's why I want to go to Morocco, really. Because in Morocco, they're abundant. There's fossils everywhere, and it's very unregulated. So you can just go there and like buy a T-Rex tooth if you want. Over here, they're gonna charge you like $6,000 or whatever. Over there, you can go to a market and get them for a couple, like $100 or something. It's true. Because there's a whole like cities just all filled with fossils. Anyhow, so if you have any stuff you want to, are you going to Morocco anytime soon? Bring me back something. Umayma, maybe she, spread the word. She just came back. I told her in class. Anyhow, a group license. This is specifically for associates. So multiple licenses, that's for brokers. Group licenses for associates. Check this out. Sometimes issued to associates, including broker associates, who are registered under a what? Owner developer. So let me read this out to you to kind of frame it. I want to frame it a little bit better. An owner developer may own properties in names of various entities. Think of a major home builder like Lennar Homes. Have you heard of Lennar Homes? So maybe the parent company is Lennar Homes International, but within that parent company, they have all of their LLCs for the various subdivisions that they construct. So that it's Lennar Homes International, but it owns Lennar Homes Lake Nona LLC, Lennar Homes Dr. Phillips LLC, all of the different subdivisions they construct. And they got, developments all over the state of Florida, even in other states and other countries. So if Lennar Homes, they employ you, you hang your license with them, and they want you to sell for all of those affiliated entities, operating under the parent company, all those different subdivisions throughout the state of Florida, they will issue you a group license. That's how they describe it. This is something the employer takes care of on your behalf. So when they submit the form, the group license form, they say so-and-so sales associate is active with us under the group license status for all of these entities. So they list all the entities they want you to sell for. And you'll see that here. If all the entities are connected so that ownership and control is with the same individual or individuals, associates working for that owner developer may be issued that group license. And if you look on line 25, it allows the associate to sell for all of the affiliated entities of that owner developer. Any questions on this? Does that make sense to you guys? So like timeshare, because you're thinking about getting in a timeshare. Marriott has timeshare resorts all over, right? So if they want you to sell for all of those other resorts, not just the one that you're operating out of, they'll put you on a group license and they'll list all of the different timeshare resorts that they want you to sell for. Any questions? We're done with this unit, which means we're done with our session for today, which means, okay. I only do this for the evening class. Just understand, because usually for the morning class, we go all the way to 10, and I make the breaks a little bit longer. But for you guys, hopefully the little breaks are not like stressful for you guys. Hopefully it just keeps you engaged. We just do these short working 10-minute breaks, come back, and let's continue. And then for that, the only reason we're able to get done early is because you sacrifice doing this long 30, 45-minute break. Make sense? Okay, so if we do get done early, just know that you're going to get the full amount of credit. Your mission is to be here every single day on time. Okay? All right. Be here promptly, because I'm going to be here promptly. Sometimes I make mistakes too. I get it. But you're adults. You manage your own schedules. Be here on time. That's your mission. Any questions here? Okay, what are we doing tonight? Yeah, I get these. Oh, by the way, yeah, I put the QR code on your textbook. Yeah, it's on the flyer and it's on your textbook. I'll put the QR code there, but for you guys online, you have just log into your user account, the one you set up when you registered for class, and then click on the course that you're enrolled for, and then you'll see materials tab, and then you'll see various links. You'll see the exam prep, and you can look in the emails we sent you, and it should be there as well. Or you could search it on just go to our website and search it, Florida Real Estate Exam Prep, and it's there. And it's good. So I'm telling you, there's more than what I shared with you. Explore. I put crossword puzzles there too. Just because I try to fill up with as many different things as possible. Yeah. So, and I'm going to turn it into a mobile app, but I'm just waiting for some things we're working on in the background in order to get to that stage. Any questions here? Push in your chairs, clean up your mess, drive safe. God bless. I will see you mañana. How do you say tomorrow in Arabic? Huh?
In Arabic,
Yes.
it's Radan.
Radan. Okay.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Yeah. Inshallah, you'll be here on time. But like, so my father is Palestinian. Yeah. So, but when I have conversations, Shway. Anyhow. So when I talk to my father, very typical Arab dad. Okay. Everything is inshallah. Everything. So no, I'm saying no. Inshallah yes or inshallah no. Okay. Yeah. No. Inshallah yes. Anyhow.
Arabic people confused about inshallah. Like now or tomorrow.
Yeah. Are we going to go tomorrow and do this thing? Inshallah. No. Inshallah yes or inshallah no, Just tell me. And it's not God willing, Yes. Yes. All right. Have a great night.
In an era where online education often falls short, there's an oasis transforming the digital learning landscape. Welcome to Cameron Academy. With our AI-powered platform, we're not just changing the game, we're rewriting the rules. At Cameron Academy, we're not just elevating education, we're lifting learners to new heights. Our comprehensive video lessons and AI tutors simplify complex real estate concepts. At Cameron Academy, we do more than prepare you for your exams. We equip you with the essential knowledge for a successful career in real estate. Break away from the traditional. Think computerized exams, a convenient study app at your fingertips, and AI support, but wait, that's not all. Live chat support when you need it, AI-driven text-to-speech content, your own personal AI tutor, and instant online certifications. This isn't just education. This is the future. We're reimagining what it means to ascend to success in the real estate industry. Choose Cameron Academy, the oasis of innovative learning. Your journey to success starts here.